Hi, welcome back guys. This is your sensei, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Naruto Survived Infected World? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Chapter 1. On a night when torrential rain fell over a city that appeared to be in ruins, reclaimed by nature, it seemed strangely abandoned, as if no one had lived there for a long time. However, faint gasps, clicks, and growls echoed from various floors of the derelict buildings. In one of these structures, specifically on the rooftop, a swirling vortex formed, mixing with the rainwater. Moments later, a figure of 157 centimeters fell heavily to the ground. The individual had messy, dull blonde hair and wore a tattered orange outfit with barely visible black details, along with black sandals. They bore numerous wounds that healed at a pace much faster than a human's, yet still significantly slower than in the past. The figure remained sprawled on the cold, wet rooftop as the rain continued to pour. After an hour, the rain ceased, leaving behind puddles of water. The protagonist was still lying on the rooftop but showed signs of regaining consciousness. After a few moments, they awoke and looked around in confusion, wondering where they were and what had happened to their companion. As they moved to sit up and surveyed the strange, ruined buildings, they stood and walked to the edge of the rooftop for a better view. Upon reaching the edge, their eyes widened in alarm at the devastation of what they once considered a city. Concern for their companions surged within them, prompting them to assume a lotus position to enter their mental landscape. In their mental landscape, the protagonist ran through familiar sewers toward where their companion should be. Upon arrival, they stood before the open doors of a cage, expecting to find Kurama, but instead found the space empty. Venturing inside the cage, they reached the back, where a massive fox the size of a horse lay resting on its front paws. Though seemingly asleep, the fox opened its blood-red eyes, marked by a slit, upon sensing the protagonist's presence. Finally awake, Kurama rose to his full height. The protagonist inquired about what had happened. Kurama explained that their Rasengan had collided with Sasuke's Chidori, creating a chakra dome that enveloped them both. This dome had opened a space-time rift that absorbed the protagonist. To keep them alive during the transition, Kurama had to expend nearly all of his chakra and a significant portion of his life force, while the protagonist lost chakra due to the dimensional shift. The protagonist fell silent for a moment, then expressed gratitude to Kurama, who returned the smile. Kurama reassured them that he would never let his companion perish. The protagonist then asked about Sasuke and the others, seeking clarity on their fate. Kurama calmly outlined 4 possible scenarios, the first being that Sasuke had been absorbed by the rift and sent to this dimension but in a different location. The second possibility was that he had been sent to another dimension entirely. The third was that he had been expelled from the chakra dome and remained in their original world. Kurama paused, causing the protagonist to feel a sense of unease. When asked about the fourth possibility, Kurama looked seriously into the protagonist's eyes, hesitating to share the grim truth. However, he knew the protagonist would eventually come to the same conclusion. The fourth possibility was that without a Biju within him and lacking the vital chakra that Bijus possessed, Sasuke could have perished from a lack of chakra or from the injuries sustained in their final battle. Upon hearing this, the protagonist felt a knot in their stomach, leading them to sit down within the cage as tears streamed down their face. Kurama, unsure of how to comfort his friend, watched silently. After an hour of mourning for the potential loss of Sasuke, the protagonist stood up, their eyes red from crying, and reflected on the situation. They acknowledged that perhaps it was for the best. Sasuke had been on a path that was uncertain, but now he might be with his family and have found the peace he needed. Kurama suggested that it was also possible Sasuke was alive in another dimension. Renewed with determination, the protagonist decided it was time to leave and see what awaited them in this new dimension. Kurama nodded in agreement and extended his fist, which the protagonist bumped with a smile. Emerging from their mental landscape, the protagonist stood and began to walk toward a staircase marked with a sign depicting a figure descending. Cautiously, they descended until reaching the 32nd floor, where they encountered a room with a warning, "Do not open this door." Paying little attention to the warning, they continued on, unaware of the shards of glass beneath their feet that crunched with each step. Suddenly, loud screams, growls, and clicks erupted from behind the door, followed by the sound of something attempting to force its way through. Without hesitation, the protagonist quickened their pace, descending more rapidly yet carefully. After half an hour, they reached the ground floor of the building. Looking around, they noticed that nature had reclaimed much of the structure. They cautiously exited through the main door, remaining alert and sharpening their senses to detect any threats that might be lurking nearby. After a few minutes of silence in the vicinity, he decided to take the risk and step outside. From the height of the building, he had seen that the city was completely devastated for some unknown reason, and nature had reclaimed everything that humanity had taken from it. He walked cautiously through the streets, careful to avoid any unwanted encounters, always alert to his surroundings. He walked for what he assumed was hours, moving with extreme caution. He hid behind a vehicle that had been overtaken by nature and looked ahead, encountering something he had only seen in his nightmares. Figures of various sizes, races, and genders were gathered in the middle of the street, clutching their faces and growling as if they had a problem. What he saw instantly set off alarms in his mind. These figures had protrusions emerging from their heads, and he noticed that they also covered their hands and torsos. What on earth are those things, he thought to himself. I have no idea, but they don't seem friendly, especially that one making clicking sounds, Kurama replied through their mental connection. Upon hearing Kurama's words, he glanced to his right and saw a female figure moving aggressively, making clicking noises with her mouth. As he tried to see her face, he noticed that the protrusions on the other figures had destroyed her head, leaving it wide open and revealing parts of her brain that had been consumed by whatever had affected them. He carefully stepped back to find another way to advance, but in a moment of distraction, he accidentally knocked over a glass bottle that had been on the ground. The bottle shattered, making noise and causing all the figures to turn in his direction. He could only think of one thing. This is bad. Instantly, all the figures began to run toward him with what he assumed were intentions to harm. He started to run at full speed to avoid being caught, glancing to his sides and noticing that more of those creatures were emerging from some buildings, joining in the chase. Displaying his skills, he made random movements that confused the creatures, causing some to veer off while others continued to pursue him. After a few seconds, he thought about pressing himself against a wall to distance himself from those things. As he turned right, he found what he believed to be a hospital, marked by a large red cross. He quickened his pace, reaching the building swiftly. He first tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. Channeling chakra into his feet, he attempted to stick to the wall, but it didn't work. Confused, he tried again, this time with more urgency as he felt the creatures closing in on him. He failed once more and began to run around the building, searching for another entrance while communicating with Kurama. Kurama, he thought urgently. What's wrong, Naruto? Kurama asked. Do you have any idea why I can't stick to the wall with my chakra? Naruto inquired, feeling frantic. It's because when you traveled between dimensions, your chakra was also used to keep you alive, but I didn't realize until you were left with chakra equivalent to that of a low-ranking genin. You need to apply a different amount of chakra to the soles of your feet for it to work. I don't think it will take you long to find the right amount. You know the exercise, Kurama concluded. Just then, Naruto found another door, but it was also blocked from the inside. He began to channel chakra to his feet again and tried to walk up the wall, but to no avail. He attempted a second time with a different amount, and this time he managed to break through a bit of the wall. Hearing the creatures approaching, he made a third and final attempt to channel chakra to his feet and, fortunately, succeeded in sticking to the wall. He quickly began to climb upward. Looking down, he noticed at least 20 of the creatures growling and 7 making clicking sounds, but he didn't dwell on that and continued until he found an open window and slipped inside. Once inside, he felt a moment of calm and inspected the area. He noticed several stretchers that appeared to have gone unused for quite some time. He walked further into the room until he saw a door leading out, but something caught his attention, a drawing accompanied by a phrase. When you are lost in the darkness, look for the light. In one of the floors of the abandoned hospital, Naruto stood for a moment, staring at the graffiti of a firefly next to the phrase, but he quickly snapped back to reality and began to search the room he was in. He immediately noticed several hospital beds, some dirty and others stained with large patches of dried blood. He wandered around the room in search of something that could help him continue his journey. After searching for a while, he found practically nothing useful, only several small metal plates with the same logo as the wall and a name with numbers that he assumed was a recognition number. Finishing his inspection of the room, he noticed a door that led to a bathroom, which had likely been modified to store medications and supplies. The pill bottles and various bandage wrappers gave him a clue. He quickly searched for anything that might still be useful, but found nothing. Turning to leave, he caught sight of himself in a mirror and noticed that his clothes were in tatters. He also saw that the color of his hair had become dull, but what surprised him most was that he had shrunk and now stood at the same height he had when he was 15. So this is another side effect of traveling between dimensions, he thought to himself, still looking in the mirror. Well, it doesn't matter. What matters now is finding new clothes. Lowering his gaze, he spotted a dark green bag. Curiously, he picked it up and carried it to the center of the room, where he had cleared space while searching for something useful. He laid several clean sheets he had found on the floor and placed the bag on top of them. Opening it, he began to take out the items inside and arrange them to see what he had. Then he checked to see if he still had his own supply bag, finding it satisfactorily intact. As he finished, Naruto began to jot down all the supplies he had found in a notebook he discovered on the floor. Supply list: 1 water bottle, 1 kitchen knife, 2 cans of food, 1 weapons manual, 1 survival manual, 3 lockpicks, 1 sewing kit, 1 Phillips screwdriver, 1 pliers, 5 bandages, 1 flashlight, 1 lighter, 1 smoke bomb, ninja, 2 medical kits, ninja, 10 kunai, ninja, 1 tactical knife, 1 map of the country. After he finished writing down everything he found in the bag, along with his own ninja pouch, he turned to see what else was left aside from the supplies. There was a black t-shirt, a white shirt, gray pants, and similarly gray shoes. Next to the clothing was his ninja pouch, a backpack he had found beneath the bag. Once he dressed, he strapped his remaining ninja equipment to his right thigh and began placing all the supplies he found into the backpack. He considered taking the bag but felt it would be an unnecessary weight that would slow him down. Before leaving the room, he reviewed the survival and weapons manuals he had discovered. Time skip. After a few hours, Naruto read both manuals. He didn't gain much from the survival manual, but it helped him enhance his existing knowledge. In contrast, the weapons manual opened his eyes to the various weapons present in this world. Unlike the elemental nations, gunpowder was used here to create firearms, explosives, and many other types. He was impressed by the vast array of weapons humanity had developed over the years. Now armed with this knowledge, he slung the backpack over his shoulders, secured the flashlight in a slot on the strap, and exited the room he had been in. He began to check the floor he was on, planning to ascend to the top floor before making his way down to the lower levels. Time skip. After 8 hours of thoroughly inspecting the hospital from top to bottom, Naruto was examining the last room. Upon opening the door, he found the same scene as in all the other rooms: stretchers, blood, and little else. Fortunately, he didn't encounter any of the more disturbing sights. However, this room had something unique: a set of boxes on a stretcher. As he stepped inside, he inspected the entire area and noticed a body slumped in the corner. What caught his attention immediately was the gun in its hands. From what he had read, it was a Browning GP. Upon checking the magazine, he found it contained 12 out of 13 bullets. Further examination of the body revealed a gunshot wound to the head, and he discovered 2 additional magazines for the Browning hidden in the clothing, which he added to his backpack. Next to the body was a handheld recorder. He picked it up and moved to the stretcher with the boxes to sit down and listen to what the recorder had to say. The recording revealed a voice filled with despair, lamenting a bite on the arm and the absence of anyone else around, only a note indicating that others had moved to another city. The speaker expressed regret and resignation, reflecting on the loss of hope for humanity. Naruto found this information intriguing. The mention of a cure for the cordyceps infection piqued his interest. He then began to sift through the boxes, discovering various documents detailing the cordyceps, modes of transmission, symptoms, stages, and weaknesses of the different phases. This is troubling, he thought, astonished by the information he had gathered. Humanity dug its own grave. For what? Cultivation? That truly is a disaster. After finishing his reading, he carefully placed all the documents back into the boxes. He opened the last box on his right and found a gas mask, which he took without hesitation, now aware of one of the virus's transmission methods. A thought crossed his mind, prompting him to consult his companion. "Kurama, are you awake?" he asked mentally. "Yes, I just woke up." "What's going on, Naruto?" Kurama replied, sounding slightly tired. "Do you think if I inhale the spores or get bitten, I'll transform?" The blonde inquired. Why do you ask?" Kurama responded. "It's just that your chakra has saved my life in various situations, but can it do the same against a virus like this?" Naruto asked, puzzled. "That's a tough question to answer, but avoid getting bitten or inhaling the spores. Don't take the risk of finding out," Kurama advised. "I understand, Kurama," Naruto replied. "Also, it wouldn't be good for it to be known that you're immune. You would have many people, including the government here, seeking you out for all kinds of tests," Kurama added seriously. "You're right, that would be a terrible way to spend the rest of my life running from people because of my potential immunity," Naruto acknowledged. After concluding the conversation with his friend, he left the room and made his way to the second floor. Upon arriving, he looked out the window to find the safest route to exit the building. Before leaving, he checked the map to pinpoint his exact location. Discovering he was in Washington, he noted Idaho to the east and Oregon to the south. After considering his options, he decided to head toward Idaho to continue his journey. End of Chapter 3. In a dimly lit room, a person lay on a mattress covered in mold and dirt. This was Naruto. Months after his arrival in this world, he had traveled through various states, starting with Idaho, then moving on to Oregon, California, Nevada, Utah, and now Wyoming. He learned a great deal about the country before the catastrophe and found himself in several challenging situations with the infected, but over time, he managed to handle them better, devising strategies to defeat them more quickly. What weighed heavily on him, however, were the humans who now only looked out for themselves, some even resorting to killing their companions to survive. He encountered raiders who attempted to take everything from him, but they were met with a surprising end. This was not easy for Naruto. Before these deaths, he had never taken a life, and it weighed on him for days. However, with Kurama's help, he managed to move on and close his heart to the pain so it wouldn't affect him in the future and jeopardize his life. He also met several good people groups that protected one another and offered mutual support. They took the time to help him understand many things about the armed forces, the Fireflies, who were apparently the rebels, how this catastrophe began, and taught him some new survival skills in this world. As he continued his journey through the various states of the country, he found himself resting after a long trip from the border between Utah and Wyoming. Feeling the rays of sunlight on his face, Naruto began to wake from his sleep. As he sat up, he looked around and noticed that his sound traps were still intact. He quickly got up and approached his backpack to grab a bottle of water. After pouring a little into his hand, he splashed it on his face to wake himself up. After a few minutes of getting ready, he left his temporary shelter to continue his aimless journey. He started walking through the city he had arrived in the night before. Searching the houses for food as his supplies were running low, he approached a house with a sign on the door that read, "Get out of here, I'm infected." Naruto tried to open the door, but it was locked from the inside, so he circled the house to find another way in. After completing his circuit, he found a window on the second floor, on the right side of the house, that was not boarded up. Channeling chakra into his feet, he jumped and stuck himself to the side of the window. Using the blunt edge of one of his kunai, he broke the window and waited a few seconds to see if the person inside would come to the window. Hearing nothing, not even a footstep in his direction, he decided to remove the remaining shards of glass and entered the house. Inside, he noticed some blood on the floor, which he assumed belonged to the tenant. As he continued exploring the second floor, he became alert when he heard something fall to the ground in the room in front of him. Instantly, he drew his Browning, which he had kept with him since he found it, and cautiously approached the room. When he reached the door, he placed his hand on the doorknob, unlocked it, and quickly pushed the door open. He was met with a wooden baseball bat swinging toward his head, but Naruto was faster and dodged the blow. He then struck his attacker in the ribs, causing them to drop the bat in pain. Not stopping there, he kicked them in the stomach and aimed his weapon at their head to ensure they wouldn't move. He told the attacker to stay still and not move. With a serious look, he noticed that the attacker complied and continued, asking why they had tried to attack him. However, before he could proceed with his interrogation, he heard the sound of a gun being ped to his right. Turning in that direction, he saw a blonde woman pointing a gun at him. The man on the ground sarcastically suggested that it would be better for him to stay still. The woman, visibly annoyed, ordered him to lower his weapon immediately. Seeing his situation, Naruto sighed, lowered his weapon, and took a few steps back, holding it up but pointing it toward the ceiling. The two strangers moved closer together, and the woman did not lower her gun even after she had stopped aiming at the man. The man calmly asked if anyone else was with Naruto. He replied that he was alone and hadn't encountered another human in weeks. The woman, skeptical, questioned why they should believe him. The man, now identified as Tommy, urged her to calm down, pointing out that Naruto was just a child. Maria, however, was not convinced, recalling how they had seen children used for nefarious purposes. Naruto listened quietly until they mentioned the children being exploited. He shared that he had seen some of those children, like himself, and had to fight off some who tried to do the same to him. This revelation caught the attention of both adults, and Tommy expressed his anger at how the people committing such acts were getting younger. Naruto reassured them that it was clear they understood the harshness of the world. He explained that he was only looking for food as he was running low, and that he had no interest in following them or their affairs. Tommy, sensing the tension, asked Maria to lower her weapon. After a moment of thought, she complied but still held on to it. Seeing that Maria had lowered her gun, Naruto slowly moved his hand to place his weapon back in its holster. Tommy then asked for his name, to which Naruto replied calmly that his name was Naruto Uzumaki. Maria found the name strange, noting it sounded Japanese, to which Naruto explained that his mother was Japanese and his father American. Tommy, intrigued, asked where Naruto was from. He shared that he was from Washington and had been there until a few months ago. When asked what brought him to Wyoming, Naruto fabricated a story about having to escape Washington due to an infected individual spreading the infection at his camp. Curious about Naruto's parents, Tommy inquired about their fate. Naruto feigned sadness, saying they were killed weeks before everything fell apart while searching for food. He reassured Maria that he had moved on, as one could not afford to grieve for long in this world. He mentioned that he was just trying to survive and was heading toward Boston, where he had heard of some jobs that could help him finally stop being a nomad. In a house in the midst of a desolate city, a man could be seen holding a weapon, with two figures behind him, one smaller and male, and the other slightly taller and female. The man opened the door and instinctively aimed his weapon forward, only to be confronted by an infected individual who lunged at him. In an instant, the infected creature fell to the ground, taken down by a precise shot to the head from the man. Maria, now with slightly longer hair, announced their plan. They would search the first floor while Naruto, dressed in different attire, would check the second floor carefully. Naruto acknowledged the plan and climbed the stairs to the second floor, his trusty Browning always ready in his hands. Upon reaching the second floor, he spotted 3 rooms but quickly dismissed one as a bathroom. He focused on the 2 remaining rooms, both with closed doors. He approached the first door quietly and found it locked. Reaching into his right back pocket, he pulled out a lockpick and skillfully unlocked the door. Once he had access, he lifted his pistol and opened the door cautiously. Inside, he discovered a room that had once belonged to a couple. The double bed revealed the tragic fate of its occupants. As he drew closer, he noticed both skeletons lying on the bed, a whiskey bottle and 2 glasses on the nightstand, suggesting they had consumed something lethal, as there were no signs of gunshot wounds on their worn clothing. He spotted a recorder clasped between their hands and took it, tucking it into his front pocket. Exiting the room slowly, he made his way to the last room in the house. He opened the door easily and stepped inside, greeted by posters of actresses and women in revealing outfits, clothes strewn across the floor, and various superhero comics. It was clear this was a teenager's room. As he rummaged through a drawer, he found a blue notebook adorned with stickers of comic characters, its cover reading Mac's Diary, with a note declaring it forbidden to read. He sat on the bed for a moment and opened the diary, engrossed in its contents. He was so absorbed that he didn't notice Tommy's voice calling from the hallway. Tommy asked if everything was all right, standing at the entrance with Maria beside him. Naruto replied that he had just gotten a bit distracted, feeling a bit uneasy. Noticing Naruto's discomfort, Tommy moved closer to sit beside him while Maria remained in the doorway, observing the two blondes. Tommy expressed concern, asking what was troubling Naruto. Naruto shared his thoughts, reflecting on how strange and unfair it felt that his worries at his age revolved around finding food, avoiding the infected, and staying alive, while other kids his age used to worry about crushes, outings with friends, or arguments with their parents. He felt a heavy weight on his shoulders, voicing his frustrations. Both adults looked at Naruto with sympathy, understanding the burden he carried. They had experienced a very different adolescence and knew how challenging it was for someone so young to face such harsh realities. Tommy reassured Naruto that it was indeed difficult and unfair for him and many others like him to live in such conditions. He encouraged Naruto to find something worth fighting for, a reason to keep hoping for a peaceful place where he wouldn't have to worry about survival. He placed a supportive hand on Naruto's shoulder, eliciting a small smile. From him, Naruto expressed gratitude, acknowledging that he wasn't the only one struggling, as there were countless others out there fighting to survive. Tommy stood up, preparing to leave the room, but Naruto's words stopped him. He told Tommy he would make a great father, which made Tommy chuckle and hope he was right. They both exited the room and headed downstairs to the kitchen, where they found a significant stockpile of canned food, energy bars, and several bottles of medicine. Maria reported their findings from the past month and a half, a total of 116 cans of food, 40 energy bars, and 15 bottles of medicine. Tommy noted that this was a substantial haul, especially compared to their last supply run, which had yielded less than half. Naruto remained quiet during their discussion, turning to check his own supplies. He had run out of canned food but still had plenty of ammunition, including a recently found sawed-off shotgun. After counting his remaining ammunition, he realized he had 30 rounds of 9mm and 16 shotgun shells, along with 13 bullets in the pistol's magazine and 2 shells already loaded in the shotgun. He was interrupted when Tommy called for him, asking him to join them to discuss the distribution of supplies. Naruto approached Tommy and Maria to talk about how to divide the supplies. Maria confirmed they would stick to their agreement, and Naruto asked for the quantities of the supplies. Tommy listed the amounts, and Naruto calculated what he could carry based on the size of his backpack. He decided to take 7 cans of food, 15 energy bars, and 3 bottles of medicine, leaving the rest for them, as they would need it more than he would at the moment. The adults exchanged glances before turning back to Naruto, questioning his decision. They suggested he could take a few more medicines since he had helped them significantly. Naruto reassured them that he still had some medicine he had found in an abandoned hospital. Naruto sensed that there must be a larger group if they were so determined to search for food. Maria acknowledged his insight, explaining that they had initially been cautious about trusting him, but he had earned their confidence over the past month and a half. Naruto reassured them that he understood their hesitation, noting that he wouldn't share information about their group with strangers either, as he believed they were good people. Tommy elaborated on their community, mentioning that they were gradually forming a group that included the elderly, families, disabled individuals, and children, all striving to provide a chance for a normal life in a world that had been devastated. Naruto smiled, expressing his hope that they would achieve their goals. From a distance, a malnourished child approached a city surrounded by fences and guarded by armed officials. One of the guards noticed the child nearing the main gate and signaled to the gatekeepers to open the doors. Inside a medical facility, a policewoman stood before the child, who was sitting on an examination table. A doctor carefully placed a device around the child's neck and checked the screen, then showed it to the policewoman, who lowered her gaze and sighed. She nodded at the doctor before turning to the child with a reassuring smile, telling him everything would be all right. The doctor approached the child to administer an injection of a mysterious liquid, while the policewoman comforted him by saying he would feel better soon. Time passed, and in the heart of the city, a massive bonfire blazed, not fueled by wood but by the bodies of those who had succumbed to infection. People surrounded the fire, carrying the remains of individuals of all ages. A truck arrived with more bodies, and everyone rushed to help load them onto the fire. A woman, upon seeing the body of a child, was overwhelmed and touched the shoulder of the person next to her, who was about to pick up another body. She asked him if he could take care of the child's body instead, expressing her inability to do so. The young man agreed to take the child's body, lifting it effortlessly and walking toward the bonfire to place it there without hesitation. After several hours, they finished burning all the bodies and formed a line in front of a table where a soldier sat, distributing cards to each person. When it was the turn of a man in his 50s, the young man who had placed the child's body in the fire lowered his scarf, revealing Naruto, whose face was smeared with soot. The man asked if there was anything else, receiving his cards in return. The soldier replied that there would be street and sewer cleanup the next day, which he said with disgust. The man inquired about which job paid more, to which the soldier grimly responded that the most unpleasant job paid the best. The man considered this for a moment before nodding in agreement. The soldier informed him that the shift started at 4 a.m., stamping a sheet of paper and handing it over. After taking the paper, the man stepped away from the line and headed toward the buildings. Naruto approached the soldier to receive his pay, asking to be signed up for the sewer cleanup the next day. The soldier complied, stamping another sheet for him. After receiving it, Naruto followed the same path as the man ahead of him. After walking a short distance, he caught up to him and tapped his shoulder. When the man turned around, he recognized Naruto and greeted him. Naruto offered Joel his ration cards, insisting that he needed them more. Joel hesitated, stating he couldn't accept them, but Naruto insisted that he and Tess would need them to find Robert. Reluctantly, Joel accepted the cards, promising to return them when he could, expressing his dislike for being in debt. They walked side by side for a while before parting ways. Naruto entered one of the buildings, climbed the stairs to the 5th floor, and walked to one of the rooms. He took a key from his pocket and unlocked the door. Inside, he went to the kitchen, poured some vodka into a glass, and drank it in one go before placing the glass back on the table. He then went to the bathroom, splashed some water on his face, and dried it with a piece of cloth he found there. After freshening up, he headed to the bedroom and lay down. In his mind, Naruto reached out to Kurama, asking if he was awake. Kurama responded, inquiring about what was going on. Naruto shared that he had heard about a quarantine zone in Atlanta established by Fedra. Kurama questioned whether Naruto intended to go there, to which Naruto clarified that it was not a typical quarantine zone. He had learned that Fedra was involved in various activities, but he was particularly interested in bullets and medicine. He explained his plan to investigate, steal boxes of bullets, and bags of medicine for bribes, seeking Kurama's opinion. Kurama acknowledged that it was a risky idea but emphasized the need for careful planning, including assessing the number of guards, security rotations, infrastructure, and ensuring they had a solid team to avoid failure. Naruto agreed, recognizing the dangers involved in such a venture. Naruto had heard that the fireflies had been more aggressive lately, so he knew patience was necessary. He decided to get some rest after a long day of dealing with numerous troublesome bodies. He bid farewell to his friend and settled in for the night. Later, Naruto was sitting in his living room, having just returned from cleaning the sewers and taking a quick shower. In front of him on the table lay a map of the United States, marked with various points and notes, along with a smaller map of Georgia showing roads and routes. He took a sip of water from a glass beside him and focused intently on the Georgia map, marking potential locations in the quarantine zone of Atlanta with a blue marker. Suddenly, he heard a knock at the door. Rising from his chair, he walked over and opened it to find Joel and a battered Tess standing there. Naruto greeted them, acknowledging their presence. Joel sighed heavily, while Tess managed a small smile and asked how he was doing. Naruto replied that he was doing quite well and inquired about the cause of Tess's injuries, pointing at her face. Tess explained that it was Robert's fault, indirectly, as he had sent 2 of his men to attack her. When Robert realized who she was, he stopped them and took her to his office, revealing that he had sold the battery to someone unknown. Naruto understood the situation and expressed that he had no personal issues with Robert, but acknowledged that he was a dangerous individual who could pose a threat in the future. He agreed to help them, knowing that Robert would likely have increased security in anticipation of their approach. Joel told Naruto to get ready, as they would leave as soon as he was prepared. Tess and Joel stepped out into the hallway while Naruto went to his room. He changed into a clean outfit, consisting of a black shirt, a dark green jacket, black pants, and black boots. He retrieved his ninja pouch from the wall, securing it to his thigh, and filled it with kunai and smoke bombs. He also grabbed his Browning GP-35 pistol, ensuring it was loaded, and attached it to his belt along with a combat knife. After packing a backpack with necessary supplies, bandages, medications, a walkie-talkie, and a gas mask, he headed to the door. Outside, Tess and Joel awaited him, and he nodded to them before they all began walking toward the outskirts of the city. They arrived at an outdoor cafe, where Joel and Naruto took a corner table while Tess approached a blonde man sitting at one of the tables. The man seemed nervous upon noticing Joel and Naruto but was calmed by Tessa's words as they began to converse. Meanwhile, Naruto reflected on his earlier conversation with Joel, questioning whether he should have been honest. He dismissed the thought quickly, considering the safety of Tommy and Maria. He knew Joel was not one to take kindly to trouble, so he preferred to keep his secrets to protect them. Suddenly, he was pulled from his thoughts as the blonde man approached cautiously. Naruto instinctively reached for his combat knife, ready to react to any suspicious movement. The man greeted them, but both Joel and Naruto regarded him with serious expressions, showing little interest. When the man suggested that if they felt lost, they should seek the light, Joel interrupted him with a blunt warning, threatening to knock out his teeth if he continued with that line. Realizing that neither of them was interested in his words, the man took a step back and left quietly. After he was gone, Naruto turned to Joel, commenting on how uninterested he seemed in the fireflies. Joel responded that they were merely fools chasing something that could never return. Naruto agreed with Joel. As they spoke, they noticed Tess approaching, prompting them to move to a less monitored area of the city. Upon reaching their destination, they headed straight for one of the buildings sealed off by Fedra and broke the lock on the door. Once inside, they closed the door behind them. Both Joel and Tess drew their weapons from their backpacks, while Naruto simply unsheathed his. They then made their way to the hidden entrance to the sewers. After walking for a few minutes, they found the correct exit door. Tess went in first, followed by Naruto and then Joel. Upon entering, Tess checked for any signs of danger, but when she turned in one direction, she let out a startled gasp. Surprised, Naruto and Joel rushed in, aiming their weapons in the direction Tess was looking. They soon saw the body of a person who had been infected, but the fungus was dead, so they lowered their weapons. Joel confirmed the situation, and Tess, regaining her composure, expressed her surprise. Naruto inquired if the body had been there the last time they visited, and Tess voiced her concern about whether the person had come here infected or had become infected after arriving. Joel suggested they move on, and Naruto advised them to stay alert. They continued through the underground path until they reached a staircase leading to their destination. Tess ascended first, followed by Joel, and lastly, Naruto, who pulled up the hood of his jacket to shield his eyes from dust. Joel noted that the structures seemed to have been reconfigured, likely in the 1980s, as everyone sought to make apartments smaller for profit. Tess responded sarcastically, and Naruto chuckled at the exchange. Joel asked how much further they had to go, and Tess indicated they were almost there, climbing a few more steps. The three positioned themselves in a line, with Tess leading, followed by Joel and Naruto. When Tess attempted to open the passage, she found it blocked, which puzzled her. Frustrated, Tess questioned who had placed an obstruction in front of the door. At that moment, Joel and Naruto caught a familiar scent. Joel asked if they could smell it, and Naruto confirmed it smelled like gunpowder. He then pointed his flashlight toward the ground and noticed blood seeping under the door. Recognizing the same scent and seeing the blood, Tess pushed against the door with more force. Joel tried to warn her, but she was already moving through the opening. They were surprised to find the body of Robert blocking the door, and upon looking around, they saw more bodies scattered in the area, some belonging to Robert's men and others from a rival group. Next to Robert's body, they spotted the battery he had supposedly tried to sell. Naruto noticed one of the bodies was dressed similarly to the others and saw a firefly pendant hanging from it. He thought to himself about the fireflies. Turning his attention back to Tess, he saw her inspecting the battery for a moment. Tess declared the battery useless, drawing the attention of both men. She expressed her anger at Robert's greed for attempting to sell it twice. Suddenly, they heard "ns" coming from one of the hallways, alerting them. The three raised their weapons toward the sound and cautiously approached, with Naruto leading the way and Joel covering him. As they reached the edge of the hallway, Joel peeked around the corner and saw a woman struggling to lift another. Naruto moved in stealthily, aiming at them, but just then, a girl of their age emerged from a door, brandishing a knife. Naruto quickly shifted his aim to her, and both women turned at the noise, pointing their weapons at him. Joel and Tess had already trained their weapons on them as well. One of the women recognized Joel and called out to him. Joel looked closely and quickly recognized her as Marlene. While Naruto kept his weapon trained on the girl, he glanced at Marlene, noticing the girl attempting to retrieve the knife she had dropped. He thwarted her attempt by stepping on it and looking back at her. He warned her not to try that again. The girl glared at him but turned her attention back to Marlene, who called out to her softly, then raised her voice to get the girl's attention. Ellie turned toward Marlene, clutching her stomach where blood was seeping, causing Marlene to worry. Marlene reassured her that she would be fine and instructed her not to do anything foolish. Both women lowered their weapons. Tess stepped forward and spoke, questioning if Ellie was the reason Robert had betrayed them, referring to her as the Che Guevara of Boston. She remarked on the dire situation that would lead Marlene to make deals with someone like Robert. Marlene admitted that things were tough, the merchandise was damaged, and she had received a no as a response. Ellie noticed Naruto pressing down harder on her knife and glared at him, demanding it back. Naruto ignored her and continued listening to the adults' conversation. Joel asked why Ellie needed a battery, and she attempted to retrieve her knife from under Naruto's foot. He quickly aimed at her again, causing Marlene and her companion to raise their weapons once more. Marlene warned him not to aim at Ellie. Naruto retorted with clear annoyance, pointing out that they were 3 against 2, and if Marlene pulled the trigger, his friends would take her and her companion down first. Reluctantly, Marlene agreed to lower her weapon, and Naruto turned to see Ellie against the wall with her hands raised and wide eyes, likely startled by the sudden intensity of the situation. As he removed the hood of his jacket, Marlene could clearly see Naruto. Marlene expressed her disbelief at seeing him. Naruto noted that life didn't seem to be treating her well. Marlene calmly requested that he stop aiming the knife at Ellie. After a moment of hesitation, Naruto agreed, but not before skillfully disarming Ellie and catching the knife in midair, leaving her astonished. Marlene explained that she needed the battery to take Ellie away, emphasizing that Ellie was more important than herself or Tommy, which surprised Naruto and angered Joel. Marlene asserted that her job was to know things. Joel, filled with resentment, pointed out that Marlene had caused the situation by turning his brother against him. Naruto, processing the information, understood why Joel had asked about a man resembling Tommy and why he was so determined to find the battery. However, he snapped back to reality when Marlene spoke again. She explained that their plan was to get Ellie out of the area, but it wouldn't be easy. Therefore, she proposed that they would take Ellie. Joel firmly rejected the idea. At the same time, Ellie declared that she wouldn't go with them. Joel turned to Tess, urging her to hurry. Tess asked who Marlene was referring to, and Marlene raised her voice slightly, stating that Ellie was cargo. Joel insisted that they didn't smuggle people. Tess offered to handle it. Marlene retorted that Kim was missing a piece of her ear and should be quiet. She explained that there was a group of fireflies at the bell tower, but she had lost her squad and didn't have a vehicle to transport Ellie. Marlene focused her gaze on Naruto, stating that she knew what they were capable of. Ellie, intrigued, asked what that meant. Marlene promised that if they brought Ellie to safety, they would receive everything they needed, not just a battery, but a truck full of fuel, weapons, and supplies. Both men looked to Tess, who nodded for them to approach her. Joel moved closer, and Naruto followed, showing Ellie the knife. He mentioned that he would keep it just in case. Ellie insulted him, calling him foolish. Marlene warned Ellie to be quiet and not to provoke him. The three companions moved a bit away from Marlene and her companion to avoid being overheard. Tess asked Joel and Naruto if they trusted Marlene, and both responded with skeptical looks. Tess acknowledged that she didn't trust her either but noted that Marlene seemed desperate. Joel suggested that they must have a converted Fedra vehicle. He reasoned that if they wanted to find Tommy quickly, this was their best option. Marlene interrupted, reminding them that she was bleeding. The three exchanged glances before Tess approached Marlene. She proposed a deal. They would take Ellie to her people, but they would receive everything before handing her over. If not, she would take action. Marlene agreed. Ellie expressed surprise at how quickly things were moving. Marlene reassured her that she was the priority and they wouldn't put her in danger. She instructed Ellie to go get her backpack. Ellie stood up and walked heavily to retrieve it. Naruto questioned Marlene about her desperation for recruits, implying that she was seeking young fighters for her rebellion. Marlene responded with a question, asking if he still felt the same way after some. Naruto bluntly expressed his disdain for her rebellion, calling it baseless and her leadership foolish. Marlene remarked that he would have made a great addition to her ranks. Naruto dismissed her comment and turned his attention back to Ellie, asking if she was ready. She nodded, and he indicated that it was time to leave. Before they could take more than a couple of steps, Ellie snatched the knife from Naruto's hands and glared at him. Marlene called out to Naruto, asking him to protect Ellie, which he acknowledged with a nod before continuing on, followed by Joel. As they exited the area, they walked through the city streets until they reached the building where Naruto and Joel lived. They ascended to the 5th floor and entered Naruto's apartment. Naruto stepped inside with Ellie while Joel remained outside, and Tess closed the door behind them. Ellie, feeling frustrated, searched for Naruto, who had gone to the kitchen to grab a drink, letting out a sigh as he did so. Ellie reprimanded him for drinking. Naruto replied that they shouldn't be killing either. He instructed her to sit tight until Joel and Tess finished discussing the plan for her transport. Ellie left the kitchen and wandered into the living room, where she noticed books, comics, and recycled items. Her attention was drawn to Naruto's maps of the United States, which were marked with various locations, leaving her surprised at how many there were. She quietly exclaimed in awe. Naruto, catching her off guard, asked if she had ever traveled beyond those 4 walls. Ellie admitted that she had only ever been in Boston, at least to her knowledge. Just then, Joel entered the apartment and headed straight for Naruto's couch to recline. Ellie approached him, asking what he was doing. Joel simply stated that he was passing the time. Frustrated, Ellie asked what she was supposed to do. Joel suggested that she would come up with something. Ellie, feeling more frustrated, noticed Joel's broken watch and pointed it out. Joel opened his eyes slightly but quickly closed them again, trying to sleep. Meanwhile, Naruto retrieved 2 boards from the floor of his apartment, along with some tools and a cold king cobra, and brought them to the living room table. Naruto took the maps, placing the one of the United States into his backpack and the one of Georgia into his back pocket. He opened the toolbox and picked up the revolver. At that moment, Ellie approached with curiosity. She asked what he was doing, and he replied that he was improving his weapon. Intrigued, Ellie wanted to know how he planned to do that. Naruto explained that he was giving it a complete cleaning and making some modifications while testing the original sight of the revolver. Ellie expressed her excitement and asked if he could teach her. Naruto instructed her to sit down, and he would give her some tips. Ellie took a seat and paid close attention to what Naruto was doing with the revolver. Hours passed since they had arrived at the apartment, and Naruto was resting in his personal armchair, facing the one where Joel was reclining. Ellie sat by the window, gazing into the distance. She turned to Naruto, watching him check his backpack, and asked if Tess and Joel were his parents. Naruto clarified that they were partners who had made some deals and completed jobs together on several occasions. Ellie, curious, inquired about the nature of those deals. Naruto listed drags, bullets, weapons, medications, and components, explaining that every little thing was valuable in their world, from a pin to a cup of coffee. Ellie then asked if they had ever trafficked humans. Naruto responded that neither Joel nor Tess did that, but he had transported people from one place to another or brought them into Boston. Ellie was intrigued and asked why Marlene seemed afraid of him. Naruto corrected her, saying it was more about respect. He recounted a peculiar first encounter with Marlene while she was on an expedition in Springfield, Illinois. He had been passing through on his way to Boston when she attempted to steal from him. He explained that he had taken down her team of about 10 people but spared her life, threatening her not to try that again. This revelation astonished Ellie, who remarked on his impressive marksmanship. Just then, Naruto heard some mumbling from Joel, but he dismissed it as unimportant. A few minutes later, Joel abruptly woke up and sat up in the armchair, still groggy. Ellie teased him about mumbling in his sleep and expressed how dark it was outside, having never been beyond the walls. Naruto told her she wasn't missing much, as it wasn't pleasant out there. Ellie asked how long it had been since they had gone outside, and Joel speculated it had been about a year, while Naruto corrected him, saying it had been 2 months. Ellie reassured them that they knew where to go, so they would be fine. Joel hesitated for a moment before agreeing, and Naruto affirmed her statement. Their conversation was interrupted when someone burst through the door. It was Tess, who informed them that the Lancaster access was clear. She asked Ellie if she had a coat, to which Ellie replied that she had one in her backpack. Tess instructed her to put it on, as it was time to leave. Tess tossed a coat to Joel and put on her own. Some hours later, night had fallen, and it was raining. They could see Fedra soldiers searching the area to ensure no one had broken the curfew. At the city entrance, a Fedra truck exited while being followed by the light from the tower until it disappeared into the darkness. A hatch leading to one of the underground passages opened, allowing them to enter the city unseen. Joel emerged first, followed by Ellie, Tess, and finally Naruto. They all crouched to avoid being seen, except for Ellie, who stood in awe at the sight outside. Ellie marveled at being outside, exclaiming how incredible it was. Just then, a light swept over her, but Tess quickly pulled her down to avoid detection. Tess instructed Ellie to do exactly as she said. Ellie nodded eagerly. Tess directed her to move around the barricade on the left side and to follow her. Naruto and Joel exchanged glances, with Joel shaking his head while Naruto sighed. They crawled behind a truck, following Tess through the debris of cars and waste, careful to avoid the patrolling soldiers. As they reached a ruined area and turned a corner, they encountered a Fedra soldier who pointed a weapon at them. The soldier recognized Joel and lifted the visor of his helmet, expressing disbelief at seeing him. Joel tried to calm the situation, but the soldier ordered them to kneel. Tess urged them to comply, and they did. She attempted to negotiate, suggesting they could complete their task and share the cards. The soldier, skeptical, ordered them to put their hands on their necks and look forward. As the soldier checked for infection, Ellie seized the moment and stabbed him in the leg with her knife. The soldier yelled in pain, cursing Ellie as he pulled the knife from his leg and aimed at her. In a protective instinct, Joel stepped in front of Ellie, urging the soldier to calm down. The soldier repeated his demand for Joel to step aside. In a surge of anger, Joel lunged at the soldier, overpowering him in a fierce struggle. Ellie was astonished by Joel's reaction. Tess took the detector and noticed the red screen, just like Naruto, who was beside her. Tess called out to Joel, showing him the detector's display. Ellie, anxious, insisted that she was not infected, pointing to her forearm where a bite mark was visible. Naruto observed the bite closely. It was not fresh, but since it was on her forearm, there was still a chance she could transform. While Naruto was lost in thought, Ellie tried to explain that the bite had happened weeks ago and that she was fine. Joel was holding his injured hand, which was bloodied and had bruised knuckles from hitting a soldier. Suddenly, they heard several soldiers' voices, snapping everyone back to reality. Naruto urged them to move quickly, stating that if they didn't leave now, they would be caught. He turned to Joel, who still seemed dazed, and shouted for him to hurry. Joel snapped to attention, grabbing the soldier's rifle before they all dashed toward the exit. Naruto lingered for a moment, approaching the fallen soldier to stab his combat knife into the soldier's forehead, muttering a quiet farewell. After finishing with the soldier, he hurried to catch up with the others. They navigated through the ruined city until they reached an alley. Halfway through, Naruto spotted a manhole cover, lifted it, and gestured for everyone to enter quickly. Once inside the sewers, they walked for several minutes until they saw a ladder leading upward. When they emerged, Joel cautiously lifted the manhole cover to check for danger. Seeing that the coast was clear, he fully opened it and climbed out, followed closely by the others. Naruto took the lead, giving directions as they moved carefully through the alleys, remaining alert. Just as he was about to turn right, they heard groans and growls coming from that direction. Naruto halted them, signaling for silence. Peeking around the corner, he spotted 2 stalkers and a runner. After assessing the situation, he turned back to the group and whispered that they needed to be stealthy to avoid attracting more infected. Joel suggested that he would go first, and Naruto agreed, instructing him to take the left stalker while he would handle the other 2. With a nod from Joel, Naruto drew his knife and crept toward his target, followed closely by Joel. Ellie and Tess peeked from the alley's edge, one out of concern for their friends and the other out of curiosity. As Naruto approached the stalker, he swiftly grabbed it by the neck and plunged the knife into its head. The runner noticed him, but before it could react, Naruto threw his knife, hitting it squarely in the forehead. He retrieved his knife from the infected skull and turned to see that Joel had already dispatched his stalker. With the area clear, Tess signaled Ellie to follow her. The 4 of them continued through the alleys until they reached an emergency exit of a building. They climbed the stairs to the 4th floor, entered an apartment, and walked to a window. Upon opening it, they discovered a wooden plank bridge connecting to the roof of the next building, and they all crossed over. Tess asked what they were doing there, but Naruto didn't respond immediately. Instead, he moved to a wooden plank that revealed a hole when shifted, surprising everyone. He instructed them to hurry inside before they caught a chill. They descended through the hole, with Naruto placing the plank back in place after entering. As he passed by the others, he headed toward a door a few meters from the entrance. He moved a brick near the door to retrieve a key, which he inserted into the lock, opening the door for everyone to enter. Inside, they found a woodworking table filled with tools and pieces, a bed, a sofa, and 2 armchairs. A map similar to Naruto's hung on the wall, but this one was marked with pins and notes. Joel glanced at the map for a moment and, noticing a note pinned over Wyoming, turned to Naruto, who spoke before Joel could say anything. Naruto reminded him that it wasn't the right time for discussions, receiving a grunt in response. He then turned to Ellie and Tess with a calmer demeanor, instructing Ellie to lie down on the bed and rest, stating that they would leave in the morning. Ellie agreed, leaving her backpack in a corner before lying down. Naruto suggested that Tess take the sofa to rest while he and Joel needed to talk, mentioning that he would take the first watch. Tess agreed and settled onto the sofa, saying goodbye as she did. Once she was comfortable, Naruto and Joel stepped away, but remained in the room. Joel quickly asked how long Naruto had known Tommy. Naruto explained that he had met him while he was with a woman named Maria, admitting he had no idea Tommy was Joel's brother. Joel pressed him about why he had lied at his house. Naruto challenged Joel, asking if he would have told him about Tommy if he had described him, knowing what Naruto was capable of. Joel's silence answered the question, confirming Naruto's suspicion that he was wary of Tommy's safety. Joel conceded, asking if Naruto had heard anything from Tommy in the past 3 weeks. Naruto replied that he had tried to reach him via radio, but Tommy had not responded, expressing his own concern for him. Joel sighed, feeling the weight of the situation. Naruto then urged Joel to listen closely. Drawing Joel's attention, Naruto subtly referenced the situation with Ellie. Joel immediately understood the implication but remained silent as Naruto continued. He expressed his condolences upon realizing that Joel was Tommy's brother. After finishing his statement, Naruto observed Joel glance at his watch before meeting his gaze again, nodding in understanding. Naruto, with a hint of sarcasm, suggested that Joel should get some rest since he was younger and needed it less. Joel, slightly annoyed, called Naruto an idiot and bid him good night. Naruto replied that they would see each other in the morning. The next morning, the rain had stopped, and the sun was shining. Ellie was still asleep while the other 3 members of the group sat cautiously in front of her bed. Joel held a soldier's rifle in his lap, Tess had her pistol resting in her hand, and Naruto remained calm, though he was alert to any movement from Ellie as she stirred. A few minutes later, Ellie woke up and turned to see the others already awake. She greeted them with a simple good morning and attempted to sit up, but Joel moved the rifle, aiming it at her to stop her. Ellie, irritated, questioned if he was serious. Joel demanded to see her bite mark, prompting Ellie to sigh and roll up her jacket sleeve. Tess, curious, wondered why Marlene would be with an infected girl. Ellie insisted that she was not infected, and Tess pressed for details on how Ellie ended up with Marlene. Ellie explained that Marlene found her a few days after she was bitten. Joel, puzzled, asked why Marlene hadn't killed her. Ellie tiredly replied that Marlene took her in and conducted tests. Tess inquired about the nature of those tests, to which Ellie listed them, counting to 10, keeping her hand raised and stating her name. Naruto then joined the conversation, asking Ellie about the plan. Ellie hesitated, causing Joel to grow uneasy, prompting Tess to move closer to her. Tess insisted on the truth, warning Ellie that they would take her back if she didn't comply. Ellie retorted that if they did that, it would be the end for her. Tess pointed out that they had overheard Ellie and knew that Joel wanted to kill her, gesturing toward him. She began to speak to Ellie as if she were an adult, gaining her attention. Tess explained that none of them were good people. They were doing this because Ellie seemed valuable. To determine her worth, they needed to know what she was. She urged Ellie to answer Naruto's question. After a moment of hesitation, Ellie glanced at Naruto, who offered her a softer look and nodded encouragingly. She then turned back to Tess and revealed that Marlene said the Fireflies had their own quarantine zone in the West, where doctors were searching for a cure. Joel interrupted, expressing his disdain for the same old story of miraculous vaccines and insisting that a cure didn't exist and never would. Ellie, frustrated, shot back that she didn't ask for this either. Joel reiterated that this wouldn't end well and insisted they needed to go back. Tess remained silent for a moment, shifting her gaze between Joel and Ellie. Naruto then approached Ellie, standing beside her and looking at the adults. He declared that he believed Ellie completely, which prompted Joel to challenge him. Tess asked Naruto why he felt that way, moving closer to Joel. Naruto sat next to Ellie and began to remove his jacket, rolling up his black shirt slightly. The others gasped as they noticed a bite scar on his right bicep. Naruto explained that his luck had to run out eventually, and it had. Tess, still shocked, asked when it had happened. He replied that it was 3 months ago, catching Ellie's attention. She noted that it had occurred the last time he left Boston and reached out to touch his scar, which he didn't mind. Naruto recounted that he had to deliver a shipment to Ohio, but things went wrong when those who were supposed to pay him betrayed him. When Tess asked what happened next, he explained that he had killed them all, but in doing so, he attracted a horde of infected. He tried to escape but was surrounded, and while he managed to fend them off, he was bitten on his arm and torso. Joel brusquely questioned why Naruto hadn't taken his own life out of fear. Naruto responded that fear was the last thing he had in this world, and he wasn't cowardly enough to end his life without a fight. He had killed several and fought his way out, contemplating suicide but ultimately choosing to survive. He locked himself in a room until morning, waking up to find that the bites were not worsening but improving. Tess questioned how it was possible that the detector had shown him as negative while Ellie was still infected. Naruto admitted he had no idea, suggesting that what made them immune might be different. He then turned to Ellie, who was still tracing her fingers over his scar. Gently, he took her hand, capturing her full attention. He told Ellie that he didn't care how she had been bitten, but she needed to understand that whatever they had was a minimal advantage in a rotten world that wouldn't change with or without a vaccine. He had kept his immunity a secret because he didn't want a life of experiments and laboratories. If she wanted that, it was her choice. Afterward, Naruto stood up, put his jacket back on, and left the room, leaving the other 3 members of the group with their thoughts. He headed to the refrigerator, retrieving some cans of food along with a few bars of dry food. Later, they returned to the room, and everyone seemed more focused. Naruto suggested they eat before it got too late and delayed their arrival at the capital, tossing a can of food to everyone. Before he could throw the jerky to Ellie, she spoke up, mentioning that she already had food that Marlene had given her. Naruto replied that it meant more for him. Time passed, and they were walking along a highway toward the capital. Tess initiated a conversation by asking Ellie how she got infected. Ellie recounted her experience of entering a mall that was fenced off and closed, thinking it was empty, only to be surprised by an infected person. She attempted to escape but was unsuccessful. Tess, skeptical, asked if Ellie had gone in alone, to which Ellie hesitantly confirmed. Tess inquired about Ellie's age, learning she was 14. Tess expressed her admiration for Ellie's bravery, to which Ellie responded with a grateful smile. Chapter 8. 16 kilometers from Boston, the group was walking through the forest on their way to where Billy and Frank were. They paused in the woods, and Joel instructed them to stay put. Ellie, feeling a bit cold, quietly mentioned it, and Joel offered her his jacket, which she gratefully accepted. After giving her the jacket, Joel moved away from the two teenagers, leaving Ellie sitting against a tree, wrapped in his jacket, while Naruto checked his weapons a few meters away. Naruto stood up, taking the shotgun he had picked up and testing its various positions in his hands. After ensuring it was ready, he returned to his spot and loaded the weapon with cartridges. Ellie, impressed by Naruto's skill with firearms, asked where he had learned to use them. Naruto explained that he had learned over time, starting with knife-throwing lessons from his parents before they passed away. He had picked up the use of firearms through experience and advice from others he had met along the way. Ellie asked if he could teach her, and after considering the pros and cons, Naruto agreed. Excited, Ellie watched as Naruto took out his Browning from its holster. He emphasized the importance of staying calm when handling a weapon, explaining that many had been bitten due to panic in dangerous situations. Ellie nodded, indicating her understanding. Naruto handed her the weapon, and she noted its weight, to which he replied that it was because she wasn't used to it. He then showed her his revolver, asking which was heavier, and Ellie correctly identified the revolver. Naruto explained that not all weapons weighed the same, and with time, they would feel lighter. He took the revolver back and began teaching her how to hold a weapon, aim, and reload. After 10 minutes, Ellie returned to her previous spot while Naruto wandered a bit away from their resting area. He noticed something and approached it, discovering a motorcycle covered in roots and moss. Next to it lay a skeleton, and upon closer inspection he noticed a bullet hole in the skull. He found a pistol in one hand and a recorder in the other. After checking the gun and finding it unusable, he took the working ammunition and stored it in his backpack. As he walked back to the camp, he listened to the recording. The voice revealed a desperate escape from the city, lamenting the loss of family and expressing a wish to reunite with them. Upon finishing the recording, Naruto returned to find Joel and Ellie ready to leave. Joel reminded them they still had at least 5 hours to go, and they set off. After an hour of walking without encountering any infected or other people, Ellie called out to Naruto, asking if he knew Bill and Frank. He explained that he didn't have as close a relationship with them as Joel did, having only made a few deals. Ellie was curious about his last name, and Naruto, surprised, jokingly asked if she wanted it for her future children. Ellie, slightly embarrassed, clarified her curiosity. He revealed his last name was Uzumaki, which Ellie found strange. He explained it was Japanese, a result of his birth circumstances. Ellie shared that her last name was Williams, which she believed belonged to her mother. They continued walking until they reached a place called Cumberland Farms. Joel announced they would make a quick stop there. Ellie read the name aloud, and Joel mentioned he would grab some things he had stored inside. Naruto also indicated he had items there, prompting Ellie to ask why they had kept things in that location. As they continued toward the establishment, Joel expressed some fatigue, noting that Ellie asked too many questions. Ellie acknowledged his comment as they entered the building. Outside, Naruto walked around to the back, where he discovered a car covered in roots. He approached the trunk and crouched down, using his knife to cut away the roots that had grown around the base of the vehicle. After securing his knife, he removed a section of cement from the ground, revealing his hidden stash of supplies. From inside, he pulled out a rusted toolbox along with a bag. He opened the toolbox to find various supplies, taking half of them before closing it and returning it to its hiding spot. He then moved to the bag, retrieving 5 packages before putting it back in the stash. With everything he needed, he replaced the cover of his hiding spot, gathered the cut roots, and walked back toward the structure, discarding the roots along the way. Upon reaching the front, he noticed that Joel and Ellie had not yet emerged, so he waited outside. A few minutes later, they exited, and Naruto immediately noticed that Joel no longer carried his rifle. Joel caught Naruto's gaze and explained that he had little ammunition, making the rifle useless. Naruto understood, agreeing that it made sense. Joel then declared they were ready to move on. As Ellie began to follow Joel, Naruto stopped her and turned her around. He pulled something from his backpack and extended it toward her. Surprised, Ellie opened her eyes wide upon seeing that it was a pack of feminine wipes. Naruto explained that he wasn't sure if she needed them now, but they would be useful at some point, a resource that many overlooked. Grateful, Ellie accepted the wipes and quickly stowed them in her backpack before they resumed walking behind Joel. They trekked several kilometers until Ellie spotted something that made her stop in awe. A few kilometers away, on a mountain, lay a wrecked airplane. She asked Joel if he had ever been on one. Joel replied that he had, but he didn't view it as a fortunate experience, recalling how cramped and expensive it had been. Ellie insisted that he should be grateful for the experience, to which Joel remarked that the passengers in the plane had also shared the same fate. After this brief pause, they continued walking for several more kilometers. Joel began explaining to Ellie how the cordyceps infection started and how it had nearly wiped out humanity. Eventually, they reached a point on the road where both Joel and Naruto exchanged glances before looking ahead. Joel raised his hand to stop Ellie, indicating they would need to go through the woods from that point on. Ellie questioned why, to which Joel replied that there were things she shouldn't see. She countered that Naruto was nearly her age, but Joel fell silent at her statement as she began to move forward. Ellie then asked if Naruto could harm her, to which Joel assured her that he wouldn't but preferred she not go ahead. Ellie remarked that he was being too honest and suggested he should lie to her. Naruto observed the exchange, noting the unexpected direction their conversation had taken, which brought a small smile to his face. They followed the road for another half-hour until Ellie stopped beside it, staring at several bodies of various sizes and shapes. Joel and Naruto stood beside her, sharing her view. Seeking an explanation, Ellie turned to Joel. He explained that a week after the outbreak, soldiers had swept through rural areas, evacuating small towns and taking people to quarantine zones, often resulting in deaths if there was no room. Questioned why they had killed those who weren't infected, and Naruto explained that the dead could not become infected. After walking for another 4 hours, they encountered a gate blocking the road, extending into the woods. Noticing the roots entwined with the gate, Joel suspected something was amiss and approached the entrance to enter the code. Inside, they found several flowers beginning to wilt from neglect, heightening Joel's suspicions that something was wrong, while Naruto also felt a sense of foreboding. They made their way to the house belonging to Bill and Frank. Joel opened the door and they stepped inside. Joel instructed Ellie to stay put, and she agreed. He then ordered Naruto to check the second floor. Naruto ascended the stairs cautiously, calling out for Bill. He searched the upstairs rooms but found no sign of him. When he returned downstairs, he turned to Ellie, looking for Joel but not seeing him, so he focused back on her. Ellie revealed that they had found a letter from Bill, indicating that he and Frank were dead. The letter mentioned Tess and various other details, leaving Naruto to reflect on their loss. He acknowledged that it was unfortunate, as they had been good allies. Ellie, confused, asked if Naruto didn't feel some pain over their deaths. He admitted that he did but needed to remain composed, explaining that his silence didn't mean he wasn't grieving, he just couldn't afford to fall apart at that moment. Just then, Joel returned and turned to Ellie, instructing her to show him her arm. Ellie rolled up her sleeve, revealing her bite mark. Joel examined it for any signs of infection but found none. He informed them that he had just assembled a battery that was charging. He then mentioned that he had a brother in Wyoming who might be in trouble and that he intended to find him. Joel explained that his brother was with the Fireflies and might know where to find others and lead them to a lab. Ellie responded affirmatively, then hesitated, wanting to discuss Tess, but Joel raised his hand to signal her to stop. He laid down some rules for her if she was to accompany him. First, never mention tests and keep their stories to themselves. If they see the bite, they will kill you without hesitation. Joel nodded at Ellie. Third, do what I say when I say it. Is that clear? He finished speaking. Ellie affirmed with a nod. Repeat it. What you say goes. Joel sighed, feeling that things were clear with Ellie. He turned to Naruto, who had been keeping to the side during their conversation. And you? What will you do, Naruto? Joel asked. I'll go with you. I'll have your back, Naruto replied. Fine, there are no rules for you, but don't get us killed, Joel warned. Understood, Naruto said. All right. Let's see what's around here, Joel said. Joel began walking toward the basement of Bill's house. Upon descending, he approached a trunk, lifting it to reveal a hatch beside a keypad. Joel entered the password correctly and descended into Bill's bunker. Once inside, they saw several books on a shelf, a workbench below it, and in the middle of the room, a table with multiple screens displaying images from security cameras. Next to it, a screen was playing an 80s song, and in the corner by the stairs, various weapons of different calibers were mounted on the wall. My God, your friend was a genius, Ellie said, gazing at the bunker. Why is there music? She asked. If the countdown doesn't reset in a few weeks, this song plays, Joel explained. The 80s, Ellie remarked. Grab some cans from there, but make sure they aren't dented or punctured, Joel instructed Ellie. And? Ellie asked as she approached the wall of weapons. No, Joel replied, sensing her implication. There's a whole wall full, Ellie argued. Ellie stepped away from the weapons wall and went to check the cans. Meanwhile, Naruto approached the weapons, trying a few without loading them. None felt right until he picked up a hunting rifle that seemed comfortable, though he noticed the scope was quite basic. He moved to the workbench, took some parts and 2 lenses, and began to gradually assemble a long-range scope. Once completed, he attached it to the rifle and tested the aim, feeling much better about it now. Naruto went upstairs to the first floor of Bill's house and headed toward one of the doors. Upon opening it, he found various hunting gear, including black cargo pants, a belt with several pouches, gloves, boots in better condition than his, and a larger backpack. This will come in handy, Naruto thought to himself. You should take a shower before putting on new clothes, Kurama suggested through their mental link. Look who decided to speak up again, Naruto thought sarcastically. You seemed quite comfortable with your company, so I didn't want to interrupt, Kurama replied. I won't deny that, but it's always good to talk to an old friend, Naruto responded, hearing laughter from the Biju in his mind, which made him smile. He took everything he found useful from the small room and left. In the hallway, he encountered Ellie, who was carrying a change of clothes. Hey, there's hot water. You should take a shower, Ellie suggested. Yeah, I was going to, but you go first, Naruto replied. Thanks, Ellie said, heading toward the bathroom, leaving Naruto standing there for a moment before he decided to go where Joel was. Upon entering the garage, he spotted the person he had been looking for. You know, this world keeps taking the people we care about the most, Naruto said as he approached Joel. What are you implying? Joel asked, puzzled. It's not a good sign that my luck ran out so soon, Joel. And then Tess met the same fate. I received the gift of immunity, but we don't know if you have that gift, Naruto concluded. What do you mean? Joel asked. Our luck is running out. We can't waste what little we have left. After we take Ellie to the Fireflies, Joel, you need to live a little longer and stop dwelling on the past, Naruto explained. Joel paused for a moment, reflecting on what Naruto had said. He then returned to checking the battery recharge. Meanwhile, Naruto distanced himself from Joel, taking the clothes he intended to wear and leaving the garage. A few minutes later, he saw Ellie coming down dressed in the change of clothes she had earlier. That works for now, Naruto said. It looks good on you, he complimented Ellie. Thanks, Ellie replied simply. Well, I'm going to take a shower. I really need it. My muscles have been tense for too long, Naruto said. The shower is all yours, Ellie replied. That he went upstairs to the second floor where the bathroom was and took a shower for about 15 minutes. When he emerged, he sat on the bed already dressed in pants and boots. In front of him was a mirror, and he stared at the various bites on his torso and arm, along with scratches on his back. He sighed, remembering that day, feeling the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Calm down. That happened a long time ago, Kurama said mentally, trying to soothe him. I know. It's just harder to forget than I thought, Naruto replied mentally. At that moment he heard the door open, and Ellie walked in. Seeing the scratches on Naruto's back left her momentarily stunned, but she continued forward, standing beside him and inspecting the bites on his torso. Can I touch? Ellie asked, looking into Naruto's eyes. He took a few seconds to respond. All right. But it's not pleasant to feel, Naruto finally said. Ellie reached out her hand and gently touched Naruto's bites one by one, then moved to the scratches on his back, noticing how he trembled slightly at the contact with his wounds. After that, she rested her head on his shoulder. Were you scared? Ellie asked. Yes, like anyone in that situation. Having death so close changes you, sometimes for better and sometimes for worse, Naruto replied. And for you? Did it change you for better or worse? Ellie asked. For both, Naruto answered simply. Why did you come? He asked with curiosity. Right, Ellie said, recalling her purpose for coming in. Joel separated his head from the man of Naruto and informed Ellie that the battery was charged and it was time to leave. Naruto asked for a couple of minutes to put on his shirt and jacket and gather his things. Ellie agreed to wait for him downstairs. A few minutes later, they were all on the ground floor of Bill's house, heading to the garage. Upon entering, they approached the truck. Joel took the driver's seat, Naruto sat in the passenger seat, and Ellie settled in the back. Once everyone was inside, Joel started the truck and began their journey toward Wyoming. Several kilometers from Bill's settlement, Joel parked the truck next to a gas station by the roadside. Ellie got out and walked toward the establishment. Naruto inquired about her destination, and she replied that she was going to the bathroom. He reminded her not to wander too far. While Ellie entered the gas station, Joel retrieved a siphon from the back of the truck and began extracting gasoline from the abandoned cars nearby. Naruto wandered around, checking a few cars for anything useful. Finding nothing, he returned to Joel. Curious, Naruto asked Joel what he planned to do after this job. Joel admitted he wasn't sure but hoped to figure things out once he found Tommy, despite their differences. Naruto expressed his desire to talk to Tommy as well. When Joel asked Naruto about his own plans after the job, Naruto reflected on his situation, mentioning that he had stayed in Boston to settle down but was now uncertain about his future. Joel acknowledged that they would have to wait and see what happened. As Joel continued siphoning gas, Ellie approached them, tiredly asking if they had to do this every hour. Joel explained that the fuel spoiled quickly, and they used to be able to travel for 12 hours on a full tank. Ellie was curious about where they were headed, but Joel replied that they weren't going anywhere specific. Joel demonstrated the siphon, and Ellie was intrigued, asking how it worked. He struggled to explain, and she playfully teased him, prompting him to tell her to stay close. Ellie smiled and decided to take a break, pulling a book from her backpack. Naruto noticed a gun inside her bag but chose to ignore it. Ellie joked about finding books for boredom, humorously concluding that they were all out. Joel remained stoic at her joke while Naruto smiled. Ellie continued with her playful banter, making a pun about a strong deity. Joel sighed in response, trying to get her to stop. Ellie, undeterred, made another joke about a volcano, and Joel suggested she wait in the truck. She agreed but insisted she wouldn't escape the jokes. After putting the book away, she walked back to the truck, leaving Naruto and Joel alone. Naruto remarked on how entertaining Ellie was, and Joel agreed, albeit reluctantly. After half an hour, Joel finished refueling, and they continued on their way. Ellie commented on the road being like a giant truck, and Joel explained how they used to clear paths for tanks. Ellie expressed her excitement about seeing a tank, and Joel assured her she would. As they drove, Naruto gazed out the window, listening to music. Suddenly, Ellie caught their attention by announcing she had found something else. She held up a magazine, claiming it had interesting pictures. Joel, noticing the magazine's cover in the rearview mirror, quickly insisted it wasn't suitable for kids. Ellie, intrigued by a particular photo, exclaimed in surprise, prompting Joel to nervously ask her to put it down. She teased him, pretending to be innocent about the magazine's contents, and after a moment of playful banter, she tossed it out the window, saying goodbye to it. After driving all day, as night began to fall, Joel turned the wheel and veered off the road into the forest. Once deep enough to avoid detection, he stopped the truck. Everyone got out, and Joel began cooking with a gas stove, preparing food while Ellie sat, bored, gazing at the sky. Noticing her boredom, Naruto decided to cheer her up and called out to her, asking if she wanted to see something amazing. Ellie, intrigued, encouraged him to surprise her. Naruto stood a few meters in front of her, ready to impress. It had been a while since Naruto had done this, so he sarcastically mentioned that one could expect bumps and bruises. Ellie gracefully replied that it would be fun to watch him stumble. Naruto stretched his arms and did a few quick squats. In an instant, he flipped onto his hands and began walking on them toward Ellie, who was a bit impressed by his arm strength. Naruto, still upside down, asked what she thought. Ellie, filled with excitement, exclaimed that it was incredible and wondered how he could do it so easily. Naruto attributed it to practice, and more practice. Curious, Ellie asked who had taught him. He shared that his parents were great athletes and had shown him these skills years before they passed away. Standing upright again, Naruto shook his hands and performed a series of acrobatic moves, from backflips to double somersaults. Ellie watched in awe, her boredom replaced by amazement. After finishing his display, he stood in front of her with a smile, asking for her thoughts. She responded that it was amazing and expressed her hope to see him perform in a city someday. Naruto agreed with a smile. Just then, Joel called out to let them know that dinner was ready. They all gathered to eat, satisfying their hunger and regaining energy. Ellie asked what they were eating, and Joel informed her it was ravioli from Chef Bogarty, made 20 years ago. Ellie remarked that he was a genius, to which both Joel and Naruto agreed. Curious about their plans, Naruto inquired how long they would stay. Joel replied that they would stay the night and leave early the next morning, traveling all day. Naruto noted that at their current pace, they would reach Wyoming by the following morning. Ellie, feeling cold, suggested making a campfire. Joel firmly told her no, explaining that the infected could see the smoke. Ellie countered that they were clever enough to notice, but Joel insisted they weren't that astute and didn't venture into such remote areas. Ellie then asked about people, receiving nods from both men. She wondered if they would rob them, to which Naruto replied that they had much more on their minds than just theft. Understanding his point, Ellie accepted it. As night fell, they each took out their sleeping bags and unrolled them on the ground. Ellie commented that it smelled good, to which Joel joked that it belonged to Frank, earning a laugh from Naruto. Ellie climbed into her sleeping bag, using her backpack as a pillow. Naruto did the same, placing his Browning under his backpack and setting his shotgun beside his sleeping bag, ready for use, just like Joel did with his hunting rifle. Once settled, Ellie pulled out her joke book and read one by the light of her flashlight. After a few jokes, she turned to Joel, calling his name softly. When he didn't respond, she waited a moment before calling again, this time louder, catching his attention. She asked if she could pose a serious question, and when he agreed, she jokingly asked why the scarecrow was awarded. Joel delivered the punchline, and Ellie smiled, calling him a rascal for knowing it. He told her to go to sleep, and Naruto, nearby, smiled at their interaction, noticing how well they were getting along. Ellie then expressed her concern about whether anyone could find them. Joel reassured her that no one would. Satisfied, she turned over to sleep. Naruto took one last look at Joel and Ellie before placing his hand under his backpack and closing his eyes. In the middle of the night, Naruto heard footsteps and movement nearby. He opened his eyes just enough to see Joel standing a few meters away, scanning the area with his rifle in hand. Noticing Naruto awake, Joel approached him. Naruto advised him to get some rest, but Joel expressed uncertainty about their safety, explaining he had stayed awake for that reason. Naruto reassured him that he would wake him in 3 hours if needed, and Joel reluctantly agreed. Afterward, Naruto returned to his sleeping bag and took his shotgun, while Joel lay down. Naruto watched as Joel rested, then turned his gaze to Ellie, smiling at her peacefulness. He quietly remarked to himself about what a little stranger could achieve. The next morning, Joel was up early, preparing their things in the truck. Naruto was also awake, finishing up with his sleeping bag and grabbing an energy bar to regain some energy. Ellie began to stir and noticed a coffee pot on the stove. As she approached and lifted the lid, she was greeted by a brown liquid that made her grimace. She asked Joel, who was outside, if he didn't like coffee. When he didn't get a response, she rolled over to go back to sleep. After packing their belongings into the truck, they hit the road again. Ellie asked Joel if that was what they served in the quarantine zone. Joel confirmed, adding that theirs was fresher than Bill's. Ellie commented that it looked like melted garbage. Naruto chuckled at the thought of Ellie. He mentioned that what looked like melted garbage could keep someone awake and energized for hours. As he gazed at the peaceful landscape beside the road, he noticed various animals were calm due to the lack of human activity nearby. After a moment, he closed his eyes, deciding to rest a bit longer to regain his energy. A few hours later, he was awakened by Ellie. When he opened his eyes, he saw her looking at him. She was curious and asked if he had friends besides Joel. Naruto replied that he had 2 friends in Wyoming who might still be waiting for him. When Ellie pressed for their names, he shared that they were Joel's brother, Tommy, and a woman named Maria, explaining that finding friends his age in this world was challenging. Ellie then asked if he had ever had a girlfriend, to which Naruto responded that girls never noticed him because he was different, emphasizing his unique appearance with blonde hair, blue eyes, facial markings, and his shorter stature. He added that his parents had trained him from a young age, which took a lot of time to master the skills he had shown her the day before. Ellie, however, found everything that made him unique to be special and complimented him, to which Naruto expressed his gratitude. Joel, glancing at Ellie through the rearview mirror, suggested she should get some sleep, but Ellie insisted she wasn't tired. Time passed, and Naruto and Joel were focused on the road while Ellie slept. Suddenly, Joel stopped the truck, waking Ellie. She groggily asked what was happening, and Joel requested her to pass him the rifle. After she complied, he instructed her to stay put. Naruto and Joel exited the truck, armed with a rifle and a shotgun, respectively. They approached a truck blocking their path and noticed the decaying skeletons inside the abandoned vehicles. Realizing they couldn't get through, they returned to the truck. Ellie inquired about the situation, and Naruto calmly explained they couldn't pass. He then asked Joel what their next move was. Joel informed them they were in Kansas City and studied the map with Naruto, but none of the routes connected to the highway. After a moment of contemplation, Joel abruptly decided they would turn back and take another ramp to get back on the highway, assuring them it would only take a minute. Joel drove a short distance back to a ramp and took the detour, navigating through the deserted city streets for about half an hour in search of a way back to the highway. Frustration grew as he couldn't find an exit. Just then, Ellie pointed out a quarantine zone to the left, catching both men's attention. They noticed the gates were open and unguarded, which struck them as odd. Suddenly, they heard a voice calling for help from a man who appeared to be injured. Both Naruto and Joel immediately recognized the potential trap and reacted swiftly. Joel instructed Ellie to buckle her seatbelt. Naruto secured his belt around his waist, positioned his backpack in front of him, and gripped his shotgun tightly. He rolled down his window and took a deep breath. Ellie questioned why they weren't helping the man, but Joel insisted he wasn't truly injured. Without hesitation, Joel accelerated the truck, aiming to scare the man away, but he dodged just in time. As they drove on, Naruto spotted more people ahead and saw one of them throw a brick, shattering their windshield. Reacting quickly, Naruto fired his shotgun at one of the attackers, taking him down. Joel pressed on, but the truck hit something, causing a tire to puncture, making it difficult to control. Unable to stop in time, they crashed into a laundromat, wrecking the vehicle. Inside the ruined laundromat, Naruto, Ellie, and Joel took cover from a group of raiders who were firing at them. Joel had his rifle ready, while Naruto held his shotgun, prepared for anything. Naruto peered out and counted around 10 armed raiders. He turned to Joel to share his plan, suggesting they split up. Joel would cover Ellie while Naruto distracted the raiders. Joel expressed concern about how they would reunite in the city, but Naruto assured him he would find them and emphasized that Ellie needed to be kept safe. After a moment of consideration, Joel nodded, and Naruto spotted an uncovered window a few meters away. He gave them a final look, then dashed toward the window, dodging the raiders' shots. He leaped through the window, shattering it in the process. Now on his own, Naruto found himself in an alley and ran in the opposite direction from where Ellie and Joel were hiding, entering the adjacent building. It turned out to be a grocery store, and he quickly concealed himself behind some shelves as he heard the front door open. A raider shouted angrily into the air, searching for him. Focusing his senses, Naruto detected 4 pairs of footsteps approaching from different directions. Confirming their numbers, he took a deep breath to steady himself, then moved silently, peeking around the corner of a shelf to spot one of the raiders with his back turned. He crouched down and began to move silently toward the man. Drawing his knife, he approached from behind, covering the man's mouth and swiftly striking him in the head, ending his life. He carefully laid the body on the ground. Hearing footsteps from one of the raiders approaching, he turned and moved a bit faster, hiding behind one of the conveyor belts stacked with boxes. Moments later, one of the raiders rounded the corner and spotted the body. In that instant, Naruto realized stealth was no longer an option. He grabbed his shotgun and positioned himself behind the conveyor belt, aiming and pulling the trigger, sending the raider's head flying. He quickly ducked again as another raider fired at him, but he was faster, sliding the shotgun's action back to eject the spent shell and chamber a new round. Rising again, he took aim but missed as the raider had taken cover just in time. He crouched once more, narrowly avoiding a bullet that whizzed past where his head had been moments before. Changing his angle, he moved a few steps to the right, reaching the end of the conveyor belt. Peering around the corner, he saw the raider aiming at his previous position, waiting for him to show himself. Spotting the raider exposed, he aimed and fired, hitting him in the chest and taking him down. Just 2 left, he thought quietly to himself. He heard footsteps approaching from the other side of the aisle. Peeking out slightly, he saw a figure with a baseball bat cautiously walking toward the body of his fallen companion. Naruto waited for the raider to pass in front of him, letting his shotgun hang at his side as he drew his pistol. As the raider walked by, he seized him by the neck and aimed his pistol at his head. At that moment, the last raider entered the store. Naruto ordered him to drop his weapon immediately or he would harm his friend. The raider, terrified, pleaded not to do it. The man in front of Naruto warned that there were more outside and urged him to lower his weapon. Naruto responded defiantly, stating he would take them out one by one. In a swift motion, he redirected his weapon and shot the man in front of him in the head, then quickly returned to the raider he had captured, finishing him off as well. Releasing the lifeless body, he moved through the store toward the entrance. Peering through one of the windows, he spotted 3 men approaching his position. Thinking quickly, he grabbed his backpack, unzipped it, and retrieved a grenade he had taken from the fireflies. After checking the raiders' positions and confirming they were close enough, he pulled the pin, counted to 3, and threw it. The raiders didn't see the grenade until it was too late. 2 of them were caught in the blast, while the third managed to jump but was severely injured, his leg shattered from the explosion. Naruto looked up to see the man writhing in pain a few meters away. He focused, listening for any signs of more raiders nearby, but it seemed quiet. Cautiously, he exited the store and approached the injured man. Once close, he grabbed him by his jacket and dragged him back inside until they reached the end of the store. There, he leaned him against a wall and looked him in the eye. He demanded answers, asking who they were. The man defiantly refused to speak, prompting Naruto to respond with a threat. He took his knife and plunged it into the man's uninjured leg, causing him to scream in pain. Naruto pressed for answers again, and the man finally revealed they were part of the resistance against Fedra, having taken power into their own hands just 10 days prior. Satisfied, Naruto instructed him to stay put. He quickly moved to a section of the store filled with pamphlets, grabbing one before returning to the man. He removed the knife from the leg, silencing the man by pressing the blade against his mouth, and held up the map. He demanded the locations of their armory, food supplies, and dormitories. He warned that if the man lied, his last moments would be filled with suffering. The man, trembling with fear, marked 3 points on the map, separated by a few streets. He then spat out the knife, pleading for peace. Thanking him for his cooperation, Naruto swiftly drove the knife into the man's forehead, ending his life in an instant and staining his palm, the shotgun resting against his chest and part of his jacket. Feeling calmer, he searched the bodies for useful items, finding some ammunition for his rifle and pistol, but none for his shotgun. Fully prepared, he exited through the back door of the store and began to run through the alleys, distancing himself from the area as quickly as possible. Hearing a truck nearby, he quickly hid behind one of the dumpsters in the alley, avoiding detection. Once the truck moved away, he emerged from his hiding spot and continued on his path. 2 hours later, Naruto was jogging through the city, remaining unseen until he reached a place with a weathered sign that read, "Sales and Repair of Watches." Noticing the shop was secured with a metal shutter, he placed his hands underneath it and lifted it as quickly as he could, struggling slightly with the rust until he created enough space to slip underneath. Once inside, he carefully lowered the shutter and released it without pinching his fingers. Inside the old shop, he leaned against the shutter and let out a sigh. After calming down and taking a few deep breaths, Naruto explored the interior, discovering numerous antique clocks alongside some that appeared more modern for the time. He noticed that the clocks no longer worked, likely due to the batteries wearing out. After the explosion on the first floor, he reached the end of the room and found a door. He attempted to open it unsuccessfully, so he channeled chakra into his foot and kicked the door, breaking it open and revealing a staircase. As he ascended, he saw an apartment and approached a small table beside the bed, where he found a dusty picture frame. Wiping the dust away with his sleeve, he saw a woman in her 30s alongside a man of similar age. He placed the frame back on the table and sat on the floor at the foot of the bed, leaning against it. He took out his backpack, placing it between his legs, and began to sort through his supplies. After counting everything, he realized he had a protein bar, some jerky, and a bottle of water left. He sighed at the limited food supply, but it was enough for him alone. He hoped that Ellie and Joel were faring just as well. He pulled out a map marked with blood and examined the locations he had carefully noted. Standing up, he moved to a window and scrutinized the street names. Knowing where he was, he returned to the map and searched for the corresponding direction. Relieved to find he was only 10 blocks away from his marked locations, he thought to himself that it was time to take action against the resistance. As night fell and only the moonlight illuminated the area, Naruto was preparing to leave the clock shop. He had contemplated his next move against the resistance, but first he needed to find Joel and Ellie. After eating a protein bar, he exited the clock shop through the second-floor window, carefully descending to the ground. Once on the ground, he began to run through the alleys, heading toward the last place he had seen his companions. As he approached, he slowed down and moved stealthily. Upon arrival, he noticed the area was clear. He navigated the street, using the parked cars for cover. When he reached the laundromat, he saw blood scattered around the area but found no supplies. Spotting a hole in the wall, he crawled through and entered an office. Following a somewhat marked path, he lost his direction after crossing a street. Resorting to Plan B, he started running along the walls, utilizing his sensor abilities that he had discovered months earlier to search for his friends. After some time, he sensed 2 people nearby. Cautiously approaching, he realized they were not his friends but did not appear to be members of the resistance either. He followed them to a tall building, watching as they entered. After waiting a few minutes, he followed them inside. He moved 1 floor down, remaining silent, until they reached a high floor and entered a room. Using his sensor abilities again, he detected 2 additional presences in the room along with the 2 he had followed. With a bit more effort, he recognized the signatures of Joel and Ellie. Carefully, he entered the room, avoiding the glass on the floor by pressing against the wall until he passed it and entered the apartment. He moved down the hallway and paused near the entrance to a room. Peering around the corner, he saw an adult man aiming a weapon at Ellie, who was kneeling with her hands extended to the sides. A few steps away, Joel was asleep but was being threatened by a boy who looked younger than both him and Ellie. At that moment, Ellie was trying to wake Joel. She called out to Joel, attempting to rouse him without success. Calling his name again, this time louder, she finally managed to wake him. Joel opened his eyes to see Ellie being threatened by a weapon and a boy pointing a gun at him. The man instructed Joel to look at him while still aiming at Ellie. Joel glared at him with anger. The man assured Joel that they did not intend to harm them and wanted to help. Despite hearing this, Naruto kept his finger on the trigger of his shotgun, not lowering it. Joel responded with frustration, acknowledging the situation. The man, clearly nervous, expressed uncertainty about what to do next but suggested that if he lowered his weapon, they would not be harmed. Joel confirmed this seriously. The man, growing more anxious, questioned Joel's tone. Ellie quickly urged Joel to reassure the man that everything would be fine. Joel echoed her sentiment, maintaining the same tone. Ellie reprimanded Joel, prompting the man to express his willingness to trust them as he began to lower his weapon. He signaled to the boy, communicating through hand gestures for him to lower his gun as well. However, he warned that if they tried anything, he would point the weapon back at Ellie, making it clear what would happen if they did. Ellie agreed to his terms. The boy stepped back slightly from Joel but kept his weapon trained on him. Joel asked if he could sit down. The man allowed it but instructed him to do so slowly. Joel stood up with his hands raised and turned to face the man, inquiring about their identities. The man introduced himself as Henry and pointed to the boy, saying he was his brother. He added that he was the most wanted man in the city, though he believed that might have changed now. Henry would respond that he was following closely and then lowered his gun. Sam, seeing his brother had lowered his weapon and stopped aiming at Ellie, followed suit and also lowered his gun. Naruto observed from the edge as Henry put away his firearm, and at that moment he decided to make his presence known. He expressed relief that they had lowered their weapons, as he didn't want to have to harm anyone, especially children, while standing in the doorway. His entrance drew the attention of everyone present, eliciting various reactions. Joel and Ellie felt a sense of relief and happiness upon seeing that the blonde was safe and had found them as promised. Meanwhile, the brothers grew nervous at the sight of blood on Naruto's palm, jacket, and shotgun. Henry, feeling anxious, asked who Naruto was. Ellie cheerfully introduced him as their companion. Naruto greeted Henry, expressing pleasure in meeting him. Henry reciprocated the sentiment but questioned how long Naruto had been there. Naruto explained that he had entered when he saw Henry aiming at his friends. When Henry asked why Naruto hadn't stopped him, Naruto replied that he sensed there was more to the situation than just robbery when Henry didn't shoot at both of them. Ellie suggested they postpone the interrogation for later, as she was hungry. Everyone gathered cushions that had previously served as mattresses for Ellie and Joel, arranging them around a lamp and sitting down to eat something. Naruto, on the other hand, walked around the area looking for some scraps of cloth. He found a few and joined the group, sitting on the floor. He took out a bottle filled with a clear liquid from his backpack and began tearing some tattered shirts. Lost in his own world, Naruto paid no attention to the others as he continued his task. He first took a larger piece of cloth, poured some alcohol on it, and began cleaning the blood from his hands. After finishing, he took another cloth and started cleaning his shotgun, which was stained. Once he completed his cleaning, he looked up to find everyone watching him. Confused, he asked what was going on. Ellie inquired about the blood, and Naruto calmly explained it belonged to those who had tried to harm them. Curious, Ellie asked how many there were, prompting Joel to express his disapproval of her question. Ellie, undeterred, insisted she was just curious and turned her gaze back to Naruto. He responded that there had been 7. Ellie was impressed, noting that quite a few had followed him. Naruto shrugged it off, saying they were easy to deal with. Henry then asked how old Naruto was, to which he replied he was 15. Henry followed up with a question about whether Naruto had killed many people. Naruto answered affirmatively and asked why Henry wanted to know. Henry hesitated, expressing that Naruto was quite young to have taken lives. Naruto explained that the world had changed, and so had people. Joel suggested it was time to sleep, as they needed energy for the next day. Henry agreed, and Naruto headed to another room to rest more comfortably. He found some pillows on a bed, took them, and arranged them on the floor for better comfort. He removed his jacket and placed it beside where he would sleep, using his backpack as a pillow while lying next to his shotgun. Not even 20 minutes had passed when he felt someone trying to wake him. Upon opening his eyes, he saw it was Ellie. He sat up and looked at her, asking what was wrong. Ellie wanted to ask him something, and he encouraged her to go ahead. She asked about his first kill. Naruto thought for a moment and recounted that it had been almost a year ago when he was in Idaho, shortly after leaving Washington. He had been in a city when a man approached him from the right. Reacting on impulse, he drew his weapon and shot the man, who fell dead at his feet. Ellie asked how he felt at that moment. Naruto admitted he felt nothing, as he was in shock over what he had done. Although guilt gnawed at him for a moment, he rationalized it as a matter of survival. He noticed Ellie's eyes glistening and gently placed a hand on her shoulder, encouraging her to let her feelings out. After a brief hesitation, Ellie succumbed to her emotions and hugged Naruto, crying on his shoulder for several minutes as she released the weight of having taken a life. Naruto held her close, soothing her back while allowing her to express everything she felt in that moment. After about 10 minutes, Ellie pulled away and wiped her tears. Naruto asked if she felt better, and she thanked him. He replied that it was what friends do and reminded her to get some sleep since the next day would be long. Ellie said goodnight and left the room to return to her makeshift bed. Naruto lay back down, staring at the ceiling for a moment before getting up to lock the door. He then carefully opened a window and, using chakra to enhance his agility, climbed down the building into the night with a plan in mind. The next morning, everyone was awake and gathered in an office of a nearby building, where they could see the entire city. Henry welcomed them to the city of death. Naruto asked about Fedra, and Henry informed him that it had fallen 10 days prior. Joel began to comment on the reputation of Fedra, and Henry finished his thought, describing them as monsters and savages who had tortured and killed for 20 years. He explained that when you treat people that way, they will eventually retaliate. Joel pointed out that Henry was not with Fedra, to which Henry admitted he was a collaborator. Naruto, with a serious tone, remarked that it made sense why Henry was so sought after. Joel stated he did not work with informants, to which Henry retorted that he lived there and knew how to find them. Henry expressed his familiarity with the city and his intention to help them escape. Joel, confused, questioned his confidence. Henry explained that he had seen Joel in action against some hostile individuals and knew where to go, but he felt unable to navigate the dangers alone, especially without Sam. Joel remarked that Henry seemed capable if he were armed. Henry admitted he had never killed anyone and that pointing a weapon without bullets was the closest he had come to violence. He proposed a deal: he would show them the way, and they would clear the path. As they spoke, they noticed Ellie and Sam laughing at a joke from a book Ellie had. Seeing Sam's smile brought a genuine smile to Henry's face, and he remarked on how long it had been since he heard laughter like that. Naruto exchanged a nod with Joel, who then asked where the exit was. After a few hours, the newly formed group made their way toward the exit Henry had indicated. They ran until they reached a bank and, once inside, Joel instructed everyone to hide. Henry pointed in a direction, leading them deeper into the building until they found a staircase going down. Upon reaching the bottom, they found themselves in a tunnel, and Henry noted that it was empty, expressing relief at their good fortune. Joel, however, cautioned him, reminding him that they had only just arrived. Henry teased Ellie about her father's pessimism, to which Joel quickly clarified that Ellie was not his daughter, and Ellie echoed the sentiment. Naruto chuckled at their banter, and Joel ordered everyone to illuminate the path ahead and prepare to run. They advanced cautiously through the tunnels, trying to make as little noise as possible. After some time, they reached a smaller corridor that led to a door adorned with colorful drawings. Sam was eager to touch the artwork, but Joel stopped him and checked the room inside. Finding it clear, he stepped in, followed by the others, with Naruto closing the door behind them. Inside, they discovered a room filled with toys and items for young children, reminiscent of a long-abandoned kindergarten. Joel explained that many people had sought refuge underground when the pandemic began. Ellie asked what had happened to them, and Joel speculated that perhaps they had stopped following the rules and gotten infected. Naruto observed Sam playing with some toy cars, and he felt a sense of relief seeing the children, Ellie and Sam, able to smile even in such a hostile environment. Joel reminded them to keep their voices down, as they still weren't sure if they were safe. Ellie, with a smile, insisted they couldn't rest because there were things to enjoy. Henry suggested it might be better to wait until nightfall, as it was safer to venture out in the dark. Naruto agreed, and they decided to rest for a few hours. After some time, they shared a meal to regain their strength. Henry, Joel, and Naruto sat together, watching Ellie and Sam kick around a makeshift ball. Time passed, and they eventually reached a door leading to the other side of the city. Emerging into the suburbs, they kept their flashlights off to avoid drawing attention, which puzzled Sam, who communicated his confusion to Henry through gestures. Henry reassured him that there was no one around because his plan had worked. Joel teased Henry about his tendency to talk, and Henry directed them down the street toward a bridge behind the last house. Ellie asked where they would go after escaping, and Henry admitted he didn't know. Ellie mentioned Wyoming, prompting both Joel and Naruto to look at her in surprise. She explained that it was a large state with plenty of space. Henry suggested it was time to say goodbye, noticing Joel's expression more than Naruto's. Ellie chimed in, recalling how Joel often dismissed her ideas, but their conversation was abruptly interrupted by a gunshot from an unknown direction. Quickly, they all took cover behind a car. Henry grabbed Sam and attempted to retreat, but another shot rang out, halting them. Henry asked what they should do, and Joel peered out to assess the situation before ducking back down. He outlined a plan to circle around the houses to reach the shooter. Ellie expressed concern about Joel's safety, but he reassured her that he would be fine in the dark. After confirming Ellie trusted him, Joel turned to Naruto, instructing him to cover him and create a distraction. Naruto agreed and readied his hunting rifle. Joel dashed to the left, and as a shot rang out in his direction, Naruto took that as his cue to act. He quickly aimed at the window where the shooter was positioned and fired, but missed. As he ducked for cover, another bullet whizzed past him. The exchange continued for several tense minutes, with neither Naruto nor the shooter managing to land a hit. Suddenly, a shot rang out that wasn't from the shooter, prompting Naruto to cautiously raise his head to see if it was safe, but nothing happened. From the house of the shooter, Joel's voice rang out urgently, urging everyone to flee. Naruto glanced back and noticed moving lights approaching them. He grabbed Ellie by the arm and lifted her, slinging his rifle onto his back while raising his shotgun as they dashed down the street. Looking over his shoulder, he saw a truck with a sweeper starting to clear the cars from their path, heading straight for them. He focused chakra into his feet and turned while running, aiming at the truck and firing a shot at its grill, but it barely caused any damage. The truck continued its advance, and he heard Joel firing his rifle, trying to stop it. Finally, one of Joel's shots struck the driver, causing the truck to veer off and crash into a house. Naruto continued running alongside Ellie, and they took cover behind some nearby cars next to the house where Joel was. Suddenly, they heard an explosion behind them, the truck having detonated for reasons they couldn't see. Naruto checked on Ellie, ensuring she was all right, and she confirmed she was fine. He instructed her to stay behind him, and she agreed. Peering out to assess the situation, Naruto saw far too many enemies for him to handle alone, even under the cover of night. He heard Henry trying to negotiate with the resistance leader, Caitlyn, but it was clear that the attempt was failing. Henry stood up from his hiding place, hands raised in surrender, which alarmed Naruto. Remembering he had something advantageous, he quickly rummaged through his backpack, drawing Ellie's curious gaze until he found a switch. Caitlyn was about to conclude her conversation with Henry when she raised her pistol to aim at him. Naruto turned to Ellie, speaking quietly, instructing her to run towards Joel's location when she heard fireworks, without looking back. Ellie expressed her confusion, but Naruto assured her she would understand soon. He counted to 3 with his fingers and then activated the switch. In the city, where they had stored weapons, food, and sleeping quarters, alarms blared for a few seconds before everything exploded into pieces. The blast was powerful enough to draw the attention of everyone with Caitlyn, including her. This was the signal Ellie needed to move closer to Joel's location. Naruto was about to follow her, when he heard the truck that had crashed and exploded moments earlier fall into the tunnels they had passed. From below, screams and noises erupted, causing everyone to turn towards the massive hole created by the truck, weapons raised. Suddenly, a swarm of infected surged out of the hole, charging toward the raiders, who quickly began firing and taking down several of the approaching infected. Naruto pulled out his shotgun and started firing at the infected that came too close, taking down several. Just as one of the infected lunged toward Ellie, a rifle shot rang out, killing it. Looking up, he saw Joel defending Ellie, prompting Naruto to focus on his own defense. As Naruto began to retreat with his shotgun, he continued to eliminate any infected nearby. He spotted Henry and Sam a few meters away, being pursued by an infected. He aimed and took it down, but in his moment of distraction, another infected came from behind, attempting to bite him. He managed to turn just in time to block with his arm, but was pushed against a car. With effort, he held the infected back and drew his knife, plunging it into the creature's head. After freeing himself from that situation, he intended to move forward but was startled by a roar that was much louder than that of a stalker. Turning, he saw a massive infected, covered in fungus, emerging from the tunnels. Shocked, Naruto muttered to himself in disbelief. He quickly scanned for Ellie and saw her running through a crowd of infected, with Joel covering her with his rifle as they moved toward the sound of Henry's cries. Naruto rushed after them, eliminating several infected that Joel couldn't handle at the same time. Ellie was helping Sam and Henry escape their hiding place, leading them towards safety when an infected spotted them. Before it could reach them, Naruto charged in, tackling it and shooting it in the head. He turned around, pistol drawn, covering their retreat. Noticing that the infected were more focused on the raiders, he turned back to follow Ellie and the others. He saw Caitlin aiming at Henry and was about to intervene when an infected child jumped at her, biting her and ending her life. Urging everyone to run, Naruto led them as they jumped over a wooden fence behind the house, fleeing the infected area until they reached a hotel where they could rest for the night. Outside, Naruto gazed at the stars, deep in thought. Kurama, through their mental connection, asked what was on his mind. Naruto expressed a feeling of rustiness, recalling how close he had come to being bitten by the infected that had cornered him against the car. Kurama reassured him that everyone makes mistakes, even the greatest ninjas. Nevertheless, Naruto resolved to sharpen his senses again, determined not to let such a lapse endanger his friends. The next morning, everyone was asleep until Ellie burst into the room where Joel, Naruto, and Henry were resting, with a now-infected Sam on top of her. Naruto realized he had strayed from his belongings and weapons during the night. Turning to where Joel was with Henry, he saw Henry aiming his weapon at Joel, assessing the tense situation. Just as he was about to take action, a gunshot rang out. Turning to Henry, he saw him with the weapon aimed forward, and in front of them sat Ellie, stunned. Beside her lay Sam, blood pooling around his head. Seeing that everything had come to an end, Joel spoke to Ellie. He asked if she was okay, but as he tried to approach, he noticed Henry shifting the gun's aim toward him, alternating his gaze between Joel and Sam's lifeless body. Naruto remained still, hoping to prevent Henry from making a rash decision. Joel calmly requested the weapon from Henry, urging him to give it up. Henry, in shock, questioned himself about what had happened. Joel continued to try to soothe the situation, telling Henry to stay calm and just hand over the gun. But Henry remained in disbelief, unable to comprehend the reality before him, still pointing the gun at Joel. Calling out for his brother, Henry desperately hoped for a response. As he noticed the blood staining the floor, he turned his gaze to Joel, who was still attempting to calm him down and get the weapon. In that moment, they saw Henry press the gun to his temple. Joel shouted for Henry to stop, but it was too late. Without hesitation, Henry pulled the trigger, taking his own life before their eyes. Naruto whispered a quiet exclamation of disbelief. He quickly moved to Ellie, guiding her away from Sam's body and into the room where they had spent the night, shutting the door behind them. He sat Ellie on the bed and took a seat beside her, telling her to stay calm. Overwhelmed by the events of the previous night and the moments that had just transpired, Ellie began to cry. She clung tightly to Naruto, who allowed her to vent her emotions on his shoulder. After a few hours, Naruto and Joel buried both brothers near the hotel where they had been staying. Ellie approached them, carrying Joel's belongings and Sam's magic board. She paused for a moment at Sam's grave, placing the board on it with the words, "I'm sorry," written on it before stepping away from both graves. Joel picked up his things and followed Ellie, while Naruto lingered for a few seconds longer. He quietly addressed the graves, saying that Henry was forgiven and could rest in peace with Sam. After bidding farewell, he walked toward his companions, and together they began their journey toward Wyoming. The cold of the snow had settled over the entire southwestern United States. A figure, bundled and hooded, approached a small cabin in the woods. The figure hung 2 white rabbits on hooks outside the cabin before entering. Inside, he found an elderly woman, and as he removed his hood, it revealed an old man. He set down his bow and turned to see another man and a boy pointing weapons at him and the woman. Joel instructed the man to lower his weapon. The man, confused, asked who they were. Naruto replied that they were just passing through. Joel reiterated his demand for the man to remove the gun with 2 fingers and keep it away from himself. The old man complied and glanced at the woman, who questioned why she hadn't killed them. She explained that the weapon had been out of her reach and that she had not been harmed. The man, not convinced, looked at the table, noticing a bowl of food and a map. He asked if she had made soup, to which she confirmed, stating it was freezing outside. Joel interjected, asking if they had seen his brother. The man quickly replied that he had. Joel pointed out that he hadn't described his brother yet. When asked if his brother looked like him, Joel nodded, and the man responded that he hadn't seen him. The woman mentioned that he was with another girl. Ellie, from the 2nd floor, asked if she could come down. Joel told her no, but she ignored him and descended anyway. When Joel questioned her disobedience, Ellie defended herself, saying they were just old people. The man remarked on Ellie's boldness, and Joel shifted the conversation, demanding to know their location while pointing at the map. The man sarcastically noted that they had gotten lost even with a map. Ellie, irritated, added that they hadn't seen any signs in the vast forest. Both elders were taken aback by Ellie's language, but it only amused them further. Joel pointed to a spot on the map, and after confirming the information with the woman, he holstered his weapon, as did Naruto, and took a seat behind him. Joel noted that they had found a good hiding place. The man mentioned they had come there before Joel was born, while the woman expressed her reluctance to return. The man expressed sympathy for Joel's loss but acknowledged that if they had made it this far, they knew how to navigate the dangers outside. He asked if they had been to Cody, to which Ellie replied that it was filled with infected. The man added that the same was true for Laramie and the Wind River Reservation. There was no safe place in populated areas. When Joel asked if they had heard of Tommy, the man replied no. Ellie then asked about the fireflies, and the woman said they only appeared in summer. Ellie clarified that she meant the people, not the insects, which prompted laughter from the couple. Joel asked if they had any advice for traveling west. The man warned them to go east instead and never venture beyond the river, pointing it out on the map. When Ellie inquired about what lay beyond the river, the woman ominously replied that it was death. She explained that they had never seen what was there, only the bodies left behind, some infected and others not. She warned that if Joel's brother was west of the river, he was lost. Ellie insisted they were not afraid, but the woman turned to Joel, saying that he was. Joel took the map and tucked it into his pocket. The group gathered their belongings and exited the cabin. Ellie, taking a rabbit hanging by the door, questioned if Joel truly believed the couple. He replied that they knew the area better than they did. Joel would tell her to leave the rabbit alone. Ellie would respond that they knew nothing and did not understand the fireflies. Naruto, who had remained quiet as always, noticed Joel clutching his chest and not hearing Ellie call him. He felt a bit worried but knew Joel was strong enough to handle a hard issue. After a few moments, Joel recovered, and they continued on their journey. Time passed, and it was night as they camped in a cave. Naruto was cleaning his pistol to ensure it wouldn't jam when he needed it. Around the campfire, Joel and Ellie were present. Naruto was so focused on his task that he didn't hear Ellie approach until she playfully nudged him in the arm. He raised an eyebrow, wondering why she did that. Ellie explained that she was trying to get his attention. Naruto apologized, admitting that sometimes he shut the world out and focused solely on his own thoughts. Ellie then asked what he planned to do after she was taken to the fireflies. Naruto thought for a moment and replied that he would stop smuggling. He was tired of that life. He expressed a desire for peace, to experience living without constantly worrying about danger. Ellie supported his idea, saying it sounded cool. Joel then suggested it was time for Ellie to sleep. She asked who would take the night watch, and Joel assured her he would handle both shifts so they could rest. Naruto and Ellie settled into the cave to sleep. The next morning, Naruto was still asleep when a noise beside him stirred him awake. He saw Joel getting up, looking confused. Realizing the source of the confusion, he turned to see Ellie at the cave entrance, awake and keeping watch with Joel's rifle. Naruto stayed back as Joel approached Ellie, and they spoke for a few minutes. After their conversation, they gathered their belongings and began walking toward the so-called River of Death. When they arrived, Joel fired a shot into the air to check for any movement, but nothing stirred, so they pressed on. The cold intensified, prompting Naruto to cover his face with a makeshift mask made from a piece of cloth. They crossed a bridge to the other side of the river and continued walking alongside it. After a few kilometers, they passed a dam and continued their journey, chatting about trivial matters until they came to a large river that made them stop in their tracks. Ellie, looking at the river with uncertainty, asked if this was indeed the River of Death. Joel pulled out the map and confirmed it was the same one. As they turned to head back, they were suddenly surrounded by armed individuals on horseback. Joel and Naruto positioned themselves in front of Ellie, raising their hands in surrender. They explained that they meant no harm and were just passing through. One of the men ordered them to drop their rifles and shotgun. Joel released his rifle, and Naruto followed suit, letting go of his shotgun as well. The man then pointed his rifle at Ellie, instructing her to take 5 steps back. Joel attempted to negotiate, suggesting a deal, but the man dismissed him rudely. Ellie complied with the order and stepped back. Naruto observed the armed men, searching for a way out of the situation. With no cover nearby, he felt it would be reckless to act. His attention was drawn to a woman in the group, whom he recognized but was slightly confused about. He decided to take a chance and called out to her. Maria, the woman, asked how he knew her name. Naruto responded with sarcasm, asking if she didn't recognize him. Maria instructed him to remove his mask and show his face. He complied slowly, ensuring he didn't appear threatening. As he revealed his face, Maria was initially surprised but quickly regained her composure. She commanded everyone to lower their weapons. One of the men tried to argue, but Maria insisted that thanks to Naruto, many of their family members had received the medications they needed. Hearing this, the armed men lowered their weapons. Maria dismounted her horse and approached Naruto, embracing him, which he returned warmly. She expressed her relief that he was safe, to which Naruto joked about being close to a few bullets. Maria asked what he was doing there, and he replied that it was a long story and quite cold. After their brief interaction, Maria instructed one of the men to switch horses with another, allowing Joel and Ellie to ride while Naruto would accompany Maria. He retrieved his rifle and shotgun, and despite one man's attempt to stop him, a look from Maria made him back down. They rode for several kilometers until they spotted a wall made of logs being guarded. As they approached, the gate opened, and they entered what resembled a small village. They rode slowly through the center of the town until Joel and Naruto spotted the person they were looking for. Joel called out to his brother, Tommy. Spotting Joel on horseback, Tommy dismounted and rushed over to embrace him, a sight that filled Naruto with happiness. Tommy asked what brought Joel there, and Joel replied that he came to save him, pulling him into another hug. After a moment, they separated, and Tommy looked at the newcomers. Noticing Maria's horse, he saw her smile and realized she had brought another surprise. Maria pointed to the other side of her horse, and Naruto emerged, approaching Tommy with a joyful expression. He remarked that it had been a while since they last saw each other. Tommy, surprised, stepped forward and embraced Naruto, who returned the gesture with enthusiasm. Tommy expressed his relief that Naruto was alive, and they shared a moment of reconnection, acknowledging the time that had passed. Tommy observed Naruto with a grin, noting how much he had grown. He stepped back from their embrace and looked him over from head to toe. He remarked with a hint of sarcasm that it was about time Naruto had grown, and that the years had treated him well. As they walked along a path, a group of men approached, attempting to take Naruto's belongings. One of the men demanded that Naruto hand over his things. Naruto firmly refused, insisting they leave him alone. He tried to move past them, but the man grabbed him roughly. The man warned Naruto that it was not a request but an order. Onlookers watched the exchange with interest, as conflicts were rare in the area. Naruto glanced at the man from the corner of his eye, channeling chakra into his hand. He seized the man's hand, squeezing it tightly, causing the man to wince in pain. Turning to face him, Naruto spoke with a serious tone, warning him never to touch him again, or he would break his hand next time. He then released the man and continued on his way, ignoring everyone around him. Upon reaching a building, Naruto noticed several tables filled with people eating, realizing it was the dining area. Maria and Tommy brought plates of food for the three of them, and they began to eat heartily, with Ellie appearing the most ravenous. Naruto felt a gaze on him and looking up, saw a girl around his age peeking at them from behind a wooden beam. He greeted her with a smile, which she returned shyly. The others present observed the silent interaction. Ellie, focused on her meal, eventually looked up and noticed the girl who had smiled at Naruto. She regarded her with a serious expression and questioned what was going on, causing the girl to retreat. Joel asked Ellie what was bothering her, and she responded by questioning the girl's behavior. Maria explained that the girl was simply curious, as the children in this area did not look or act like them. Ellie insisted that she should teach them a lesson and demanded her pistol. Maria replied that they were not armed. Ellie then inquired about Naruto's situation. Naruto interjected, reminding her not to compare herself to him. Ellie dismissed his comment, and Tommy pointed out that they had started off on the wrong foot. Ellie expressed her frustration, claiming they were going to be killed. Tommy clarified that they could not let just anyone in, but it was all a show to scare off potential challengers. Ellie argued that there were a couple of elders who were terrified of them. Joel called her name, and she continued, mentioning that they left bodies in plain sight. Maria explained that those were the ones who had tried to challenge them. Tommy added that a bad reputation did not equate to bad people, to which Maria agreed, casting a glance at Joel. Noticing Maria's gaze on Joel, Naruto grew serious and called her name, gaining her attention. He reminded her that he had more blood on his hands than anyone in the village, suggesting she direct her judgment toward him as well. Maria fell silent, looking away for a moment before shifting her gaze to Tommy. Joel expressed gratitude for Maria's hospitality but mentioned he wanted to spend some time with family. Tommy clarified that Maria was his family, taking her hand. Ellie, lacking enthusiasm, congratulated them, while Joel offered his congratulations as well, albeit without much spirit. Naruto chimed in, expressing his happiness for them, noting that it was nice to see them together. Tommy suggested they take a walk, and they all exited the dining area, following him and Maria as they shared how they had built their community. They arrived at a barn filled with farm animals, and Naruto felt a glimmer of hope seeing how well-structured everything was. He thought that perhaps he could find the peace he had been searching for in this place. Lost in his thoughts, he didn't notice when Maria called his name until she touched his shoulder. Concerned, Maria asked if he was all right. He replied that he was just lost in thought. Maria then offered to show him where his house was. Confused, Naruto asked if she meant his house. Maria confirmed, explaining that they had promised him a place to stay. Due to some complications, they couldn't host him in their home, but they had secured a house for him thanks to the expedition where they found him. Naruto stood still for a moment, surprised and internally grateful for having trusted Tommy and Maria. He hesitated, questioning if it was too much since he hadn't provided them with anything of great value. Maria reassured him that the medications he had brought had saved many lives, and a part of the village owed him for that. Feeling somewhat reassured, Naruto apologized for his earlier words in the dining area, explaining that he had been through a lot and that no one was in a position to judge others. Maria accepted his apology, acknowledging that he was right, and she apologized for her earlier actions as well, explaining the importance of keeping their home a secret. They continued walking until they reached a house that appeared abandoned but could be restored with some cleaning. They left Ellie there while Naruto and Maria headed toward the front of her house, stopping at the one next door. Maria pointed out that this would be Naruto's new home, explaining that Tommy had mentioned his preference for houses with basements and garages. They had chosen something that would make him feel comfortable. As Naruto looked at the house before him, he felt a tightness in his chest, realizing he was witnessing a dream he had held since arriving in this world over a year ago. It felt incredible. He expressed his gratitude, telling Maria that it was even better than he had imagined. After everything she had been through, Maria believed she deserved this moment. She encouraged her friend to enter and explore, promising to stay by her side. Handing over the keys to the house, she watched as her friend stepped inside. The house was 2 stories tall, with a triangular roof. To the right, there was a wooden door that Maria assumed led to the garage. Her friend ascended the steps to the entrance, inserted the key into the lock, and opened the door. Upon entering, she was greeted by a beautifully decorated living room that suited her taste perfectly. She set her backpack down by the door and began to explore the house. Walking through the living room, she noticed the dining area to her left. Further along, she saw a partition that led to the bedrooms and an island in the kitchen behind it, where the sink was located. After exploring the entire first floor, Naruto decided to head back and go up to the second floor. He found 3 rooms. The first on the left was a small space with a bar at head height that stretched from side to side. Adorned with a few hangers, it served as a closet for coats. The second door on the left led to the bathroom, which he found fully equipped. He then moved to the next door on the right and discovered another empty but slightly more spacious room. Looking ahead, he saw the last door and, upon opening it, found his bedroom, furnished with everything he needed. At the back, there was a small balcony overlooking Jackson Street, along with a wardrobe and a wooden dresser that matched the color of the house. After finishing his tour of the room, he went back to the first floor and passed through the door on his right. Upon opening it, he saw a good-sized garage that was empty, but he could already envision what he would put there. He then returned to the main house and approached the door he had noticed beneath the stairs. Opening it revealed a staircase leading down, and beside the door was a switch that he flipped, illuminating the lights in the basement. As he descended, he noted that the space was ample enough for his needs. Standing on the first floor, he smiled at everything around him. Naruto thought to himself that this was incredible. Kurama, connected to him mentally, agreed, noting that it was indeed something remarkable and that here, Naruto would find the peace he had been searching for. Naruto felt a sense of comfort wash over him, realizing he could finally enjoy a restful night. Kurama playfully reminded him to take a bath, teasing him about how long it had been since he last did so in the cold. Naruto chuckled at the remark and ended the mental link with Kurama. He made his way to the second floor, entered his room, and took out some clothes he assumed Maria or Tommy had left for him before heading to the bathroom for a shower. Later that night, all the children and adults gathered in a large hall to watch a movie, including Ellie. After his shower, Naruto went to the basement to leave his backpack with his weapons, knowing they would be safe there. He then bundled up to venture out into the town, noticing the streets were mostly empty except for a few adults walking in unknown directions. Upon arriving at the large hall where everyone was gathered, he spotted Maria among the crowd and approached her. He greeted her warmly, and she asked if he liked his new home. Naruto expressed his excitement about having so much space, feeling like it was a dream come true. Maria joked that if he stayed, he would have to do some work to help pay for it, to which Naruto promised he would contribute as much as he could during his stay. Maria then asked if he would indeed stay, and Naruto replied that he believed Joel and Ellie could manage on their own, as he needed some peace to recover from everything that had happened. Maria welcomed him, and he thanked her. Just then, Naruto noticed Ellie hurriedly leaving the room, which sparked a sense of unease in him. He quickly said goodbye to Maria and followed Ellie through the town until he saw her enter the house they had been given. He noticed that the front window was lit by a light bulb. Approaching, he opened the door easily and went upstairs. When he reached the back room, he knocked on the door but received no answer, so he entered. Inside, he asked Ellie what was wrong. She was surprised to see him and questioned his presence. Naruto explained that he had seen her leave the hall quickly and felt something was off, which prompted him to follow her. He also wanted to discuss something important with her. He hesitated, revealing that he wanted to stay in Jackson to live, feeling that he was no longer useful for their mission and that he had finally found what he had been searching for. Before he could finish, Ellie interrupted him, expressing her frustration and anger. She felt betrayed, accusing him of wanting to distance himself from her at such a crucial moment in their journey. Naruto fell silent, feeling guilty under her gaze. After a moment, he looked up to respond, but the words escaped him. Instead, he turned and left the house, heading back to his own. An hour later, Naruto sat in his living room, staring silently at the fire in the fireplace. His solitude was interrupted by knocks at the door. When he opened it, he found Tommy standing there, looking uncertain. Tommy asked if he could come in, and Naruto welcomed him, closing the door behind him. They walked to the living room and sat down. Tommy mentioned that Maria had told him Naruto wanted to stay. Naruto confirmed this, explaining that the place made him feel like he could find some peace. Tommy expressed his happiness to hear that, but then added that Maria had also mentioned Naruto would leave Joel alone with Ellie to stay. Naruto explained that he felt he was no longer needed for their journey, as Joel, despite his age, was capable of getting Ellie to the Fireflies. Tommy then shared that Joel had asked him to take Ellie to the Fireflies, which added another layer to their conversation. Tommy expressed his doubts about his capabilities, surprising Naruto with this revelation. It made him reflect on what Ellie had said earlier, and with this new information, he gained a better understanding of Ellie's feelings. After a moment of contemplation, he turned to Tommy and inquired about the walkie-talkie he had given him. The next morning, Ellie and Tommy walked toward the stable. Upon arrival, they headed to where the horses were kept. Ellie found her horse already saddled, and beside it stood Joel. Ellie asked if Joel had come to say goodbye, to which he replied that he was there to borrow a horse to leave. Tommy chimed in, saying he would have given Joel a horse. Joel explained that he had thought Ellie deserved to choose for herself. As he approached Ellie, he was interrupted when she insisted they leave. She handed him the bag she was carrying, and Joel agreed. After securing the bag to the saddle, the three of them set off with the horse in tow. Joel helped Ellie mount the horse and instructed her to hold both reins. She assured him she would manage. Joel then turned to his brother and asked where they were headed. Tommy replied they would be going southeast along the I-25, and he added that they would see it from the road. The brothers shared a farewell hug, and Tommy mentioned there was a place for both of them. Joel asked if he could borrow a rifle, to which Tommy agreed, reminding him that his wife had taken his. Just then, they noticed Naruto approaching, dressed in his coat. He asked if they were leaving, and Joel confirmed it was time to go. Naruto mentioned he had come to say goodbye. Ellie apologized for the previous day, and Naruto reassured her that everything was forgiven and that he trusted they would be okay. Naruto then pulled something from his coat pocket and tossed it to Ellie. She recognized it as a walkie-talkie and looked back at him. He instructed her to connect to frequency 1.67 if they needed help, and he would come as quickly as possible. Ellie thanked him and tucked it into her backpack. She then approached Joel, extending her hand, which he shook. Naruto bid Joel farewell, and Joel wished him to take care. After Joel mounted the horse, Tommy guided them toward the exit. Naruto returned home to rest, having only gotten up to say goodbye to his friends. Later that day, as Naruto wandered through the town, he encountered Tommy and Maria. He greeted them, and Maria responded that they were well. Tommy informed Naruto that the council wanted to see him. Confused, Naruto asked why. Maria explained it was regarding his integration into the community and the incident from the previous day. Understanding the situation, Naruto agreed to follow them to a building where a large table was set up, surrounded by several people of varying ages. Maria took a seat behind the table. A man in his 40s greeted Naruto, who calmly acknowledged that he didn't need an introduction. Another man in his 30s explained that they had heard about the supplies and medicines he had provided to Tommy and Maria when they were rebuilding Jackson. A woman in her 50s thanked him for saving several lives. Naruto modestly replied that it was nothing and expressed his gratitude for being allowed to stay in such an incredible place. Maria then shifted the conversation to the other reason for his summons. A young man in his 20s mentioned the encounter Naruto had with one of their men. Naruto acknowledged that his actions were frowned upon in the community but explained that coming from difficult circumstances made it feel like they were trying to take away his very means of survival. The council members exchanged glances before returning their attention to Naruto. The man in his 30s proposed a deal for him. He explained they wanted Naruto to be a sort of jack of all trades for the community, assisting in gathering supplies when needed. In return, he would be granted certain privileges. Curious, Naruto asked what those privileges would entail. Maria listed them. His gear would not be taken, he would receive weapons and ammunition when needed, he would have free passage whenever he requested it, and he would have access to the cantina, thanks to Tommy's recommendation. After considering the proposal, Naruto turned to the council and agreed that it was a fair deal. The man in his 50s welcomed him officially to Jackson. Naruto expressed his hope to meet their expectations. Once the meeting concluded, Naruto waited for Tommy outside. When Tommy emerged, Naruto approached him, expressing his excitement about the free access to the cantina, which he considered the best part of the deal after keeping his gear. Tommy explained he had convinced Maria to include it, knowing Naruto enjoyed a good drink. Naruto thanked him for the support. Naruto needed a favor. He asked Tommy if he could take him to the town library. Tommy agreed, and they began walking through the village, discussing trivial matters until they arrived at a medium-sized building. Tommy pointed out the library and asked if Naruto needed anything else. Naruto smiled and said that was all he needed, thanking Tommy. Tommy mentioned he would be helping with some tasks around town and said goodbye. Naruto entered the library and saw several wooden shelves filled with books, some in better condition than others. He wandered through the aisles, scanning the titles for something useful. After spending about 40 minutes reviewing the books, he found what he needed. Just as he was about to leave, he encountered the same girl he had seen in the dining hall. He greeted her, but she seemed startled and turned to face him. She returned the greeting, and Naruto apologized for surprising her. She reassured him that it was fine, just unexpected. Naruto introduced himself, and she introduced herself as Dina. They exchanged pleasantries, and Dina asked what he was doing there. Naruto explained he was looking for books for some projects. Intrigued, Dina asked about the projects, and Naruto mentioned they were for his new home and some personal endeavors. Dina wished him luck, and he thanked her, asking what book she was searching for. She replied that she was looking for a story, as she enjoyed reading. Naruto understood and said he had to leave, bidding her farewell. Naruto exited the library, jotting down the titles of the books he was taking. He headed home to start his plans. A week had passed since he settled in Jackson, and things were going well. The council had not yet given him any assignments, so he had taken the opportunity to read the books he borrowed from the library. One of them was about carpentry, which he finished in 2 nights. He spent a day building shelves for his garage and basement, as well as crafting tables for both rooms. He appreciated that the wood was already cut, allowing him to take measurements and request it from the lumberjacks. Feeling hungry, he walked to the dining hall. After getting a plate with some vegetables and a piece of meat, he found an empty table and sat down. While eating and reading another book on mechanics, he was interrupted by 2 boys who sat across from him with their own plates. He recognized Dina but not the boy beside her. He greeted Dina and asked who her friend was. Dina introduced the boy as Jesse, and Naruto extended his hand for a handshake, which Jesse reciprocated. Dina then inquired about Naruto's friends who had come with him. Naruto explained they had left to attend to other matters, choosing not to elaborate. Jesse, intrigued, asked if the rumors were true. Confused, Naruto asked which rumors he meant. Jesse explained that there were whispers about Naruto helping the town during a difficult time and that he was considered dangerous. Naruto sighed, confirming the rumors. He recounted how he had crossed paths with Tommy and Maria over a year ago and helped them gather supplies. Regarding the other part, he stated that while he wouldn't share everything he did, they could imagine it was much more intense than they thought. The boys were taken aback by Naruto's confirmation of the rumors, their eyes widening in surprise. Meanwhile, Naruto continued eating and reading as if nothing had happened. Dina, recovering from her shock, asked if he regretted his actions. Naruto replied simply that he did not. He explained that what he did was necessary for survival and that he would do it all over again if needed. After this brief conversation, they fell into a comfortable silence, unsure how to continue. Once finished with his meal, Naruto took his plate to wash it and then left the dining hall, heading back home. He sat on the sofa, contemplating how Joel and Ellie were faring on their journey. As night fell over Jackson, Naruto was resting in one of his chairs when he suddenly woke up and noticed it was dark outside. He got up, walked to the pantry, and grabbed an energy bar he had brought with him. He then made his way down to the basement while eating. Upon reaching the bottom, he saw various pieces and tools he had brought along. Suddenly, he heard a familiar static noise, which prompted him to remember its source. He quickly went to one of the drawers in his workbench and pulled out a walkie-talkie. Concerned, he called out for Joel and Ellie, holding the walkie-talkie close to his mouth. He heard a distorted voice through the static, Ellie's voice calling for help, mentioning she was injured. Naruto quickly asked for their location. Ellie responded, her voice breaking up, mentioning a university in Colorado and that they needed help. Naruto assured her he was on his way. He grabbed his backpack, packing essential items for the journey, including food for emergencies. He cleaned and reloaded his weapons, securing them in their holsters, and took his belt with various compartments to store additional items. After putting on warm clothing, he left his house and crossed the street to Tommy and Maria's home. He knocked on the door, waiting anxiously for a response until it finally opened. Maria greeted him but fell silent upon seeing his attire, asking if he was leaving. Naruto explained that someone had harmed Joel and Ellie. Naruto explained that he needed to go find and help them. Tommy insisted on joining him, but Naruto firmly stated that he would go alone while Tommy stayed to protect this part of his family. He urged Tommy not to take the risk of leaving, promising that he would bring everyone back to Jackson safely. Tommy reluctantly agreed, asking Naruto to return unharmed, including himself. Naruto assured him he would. After their farewell, Naruto set off from Jackson, running swiftly towards the forest. He infused chakra into his feet to enhance his speed. Days had passed since he left Jackson, and according to the map, he still had at least 3 days of travel ahead. However, he knew he needed to rest, as his body was fatigued and his chakra was becoming unstable. As night fell, he stopped near some trees, leaning against one while he lit a small fire to warm a can of food. While waiting for the food to heat, he studied the map, tracing his route with his finger. He realized that taking a shortcut through the fields would save him a day and allow him to reach the University of Colorado faster. After finishing his meal, he lay down to sleep, remaining alert. 3 days later, he had passed the University of Colorado, searching for anything useful but only finding some herbal medicine recipes. Continuing on his journey, he came across a large puddle of blood next to abandoned train tracks, along with hoofprints. Recognizing the signs that Ellie and Joel had passed through, he followed the trail, moving cautiously due to his depleted chakra. As he tracked the signs, he heard voices approaching from his right and quickly hid behind a car. 3 armed men with baseball bats were heading in his direction but stopped when they noticed the blood trail. One of them exclaimed that he found the blood of the man who had killed Alan, prompting questions from the others about how he knew it belonged to that person. The man explained that it looked like someone had been dragged and pointed out the horse tracks, mentioning that the person had been riding with a girl. Listening from his hiding spot, Naruto realized these men intended harm to his friends. He drew his revolver, prepared for action. Rising from his cover, he shot the first man he saw in the head, taking him down instantly. He quickly aimed at another, shooting him in the heart. The last man, realizing the danger, raised his hands in surrender. Naruto ordered him to drop the bat and approached, pointing his revolver at the man's forehead. He demanded to know who they were, and the man, trembling, claimed they were just a group of survivors. When Naruto pressed for information about why they were looking for a man and a girl, the man revealed it was because they had killed one of their own. Naruto inquired about the location of their group, but the man fell silent. Knowing he wouldn't easily divulge the information, Naruto shot him in the foot, causing him to cry out in pain. He then asked again, this time with more urgency. The man, gasping in agony, finally revealed that their group was at the Silver Lake Resort. Naruto pulled out a map and a knife, stabbing the man's hand to ensure compliance. He demanded that the man mark the location of Silver Lake on the map, threatening him with further pain if he lied. The man complied, marking the spot before Naruto cleaned the knife on his clothing. Satisfied, Naruto coldly told him that if he had family, they would soon be with him. Without giving the man a chance to respond, he shot him in the head. After checking the bodies for supplies, he continued to follow the trail. After a few hours, he arrived at a house. Inside, he found bloodied rags and a sheet stained with blood. Calling out for Ellie and Joel, he received no response. He searched the house thoroughly but found nothing. Noticing a door that likely led to a basement, he descended the stairs. There, he saw more blood and a mattress with a sheet, along with a vial labeled penicillin. Finding no one there, he continued to search the remaining houses. In the last house, he discovered two lifeless bodies, one tied to a chair and the other bound near a heater. He inspected the bodies carefully and recognized Joel's handiwork, the same strategy he had learned from him during one of their missions. At least I know he's on the move, he thought to himself. Now, which direction did he go? He exited the house and began to observe the footprints. Following the tracks, he noticed that most of them were not linear until he spotted some that overlapped with existing ones and led away from the area. He decided to follow them. After an hour of tracking, he saw a sign that read, Silver Lake Resort. So, I can kill two birds with one stone, he thought. With a clear idea in mind, Naruto began to run toward the resort. Upon arriving, he moved stealthily behind the buildings, careful not to be seen. As he advanced, he spotted a man a few meters away. He approached quietly and, from behind, covered the man's mouth and subdued him until he stopped moving. Naruto dragged the body behind a house and concealed it with snow. Continuing on, he entered a house, mindful of making minimal noise. He hid behind a bar just as a man and a woman walked through the door. The woman spoke about a girl found with the man who had killed Alan, while the man mentioned that David had her since the day before and intended to recruit her into their group. The woman expressed her outrage, suggesting the girl should be killed just like the man. At that moment, Naruto emerged from behind the bar, aiming his shotgun at them. He warned them not to speak ill of his friends, surprising both adults, who raised their hands in surrender. They were about to say something, but Naruto was quicker, threatening to kill them if they screamed. He offered them a chance to survive if they cooperated, demanding to know where the girl was. The woman claimed she didn't know, but the man revealed that she was with David in the Forbidden Zone. When Naruto asked where that was, the man explained it was in the kitchen of Bob's restaurant, where she was being held captive. The woman added that the restaurant had a green sign displaying its name. Thanking them for their cooperation, Naruto approached them with his shotgun lowered. In a swift motion, he drew his pistol, placed a cushion from one of the chairs over the man's head, and fired, killing him instantly. The woman was left in shock, and before she could react, a knife struck her, ending her life as well. Afterward, he cleaned the knife on the man's clothing. He locked the house behind him to prevent anyone from entering and moved through the resort toward the restaurant, encountering more people and silently taking them down. Blood marked the path he took until he reached the restaurant, only to find it engulfed in flames. Deciding to enter, he searched for Ellie. Meanwhile, at the back exit of the restaurant, Joel and Ellie were making their way out, supporting each other. They were halted by a voice calling out to them. A girl stood there, pointing a gun at them, her eyes red from crying. She accused them of killing her father at the university and demanded justice. Joel tried to negotiate, admitting his guilt and asking her to let Ellie go. The girl insisted that both of them deserved to die for taking her father and for the deaths of others. As Joel prepared to shield Ellie, they heard a gunshot but felt no pain. When Joel opened his eyes, he saw the girl on the ground, lifeless, and behind her stood Naruto, his shotgun still raised. He cursed under his breath and then turned to approach Joel and Ellie. He noticed Joel was fine, but Ellie appeared to be in shock. Seeking an explanation, he saw Joel shake his head. They needed to leave quickly. The gunshot would have attracted attention. 3 days later, in a house miles from the resort, Naruto, Joel, and Ellie rested after hours of travel. It was nighttime, and Naruto and Joel sat in front of a lamp in the living room while Ellie slept in the bedroom. They had endured a lot in recent days, Naruto remarked. Joel confirmed that they had faced many challenges, recounting their discovery that the Fireflies had abandoned the university and relocated to the hospital in Salt Lake City. He explained how he had been injured during their escape, leading to the events Naruto had witnessed. Naruto expressed his intention to stay with them, despite Joel's insistence that it wasn't necessary. He acknowledged Joel's capability to keep Ellie safe but wanted to help in case anything went wrong again. Joel thanked him, appreciating that Naruto had chosen to stay despite wanting peace in Jackson. Naruto shared that they had become like family to him, having lost his own long ago and not wanting to lose another. Joel, feeling nervous, admitted that they too had come to see him as family. After their heartfelt conversation, Naruto encouraged Joel to get some rest while he took the first watch. A month later, they arrived in Utah, finding it easier to travel along the road. Naruto noted how they were getting closer, and Joel agreed. Ellie marveled at how far they had come across the country, while Joel acknowledged the many complications they had faced. They entered the city cautiously, determined not to attract any unwanted attention. Joel mentioned seeing a destroyed guitar in a trailer along the road, prompting a moment of reflection as they continued their journey. It had been a while since Joel had played, and he thought he could teach Ellie. He was sure he would do well. Ellie smiled slightly in agreement, feeling a spark of interest. Joel asked if she wanted to learn to play the guitar. When he received no immediate response, he looked at her with curiosity, calling her name. Ellie snapped out of her trance, excitedly expressing her eagerness to learn. Joel glanced at Naruto, seeking insight into Ellie's behavior, but Naruto simply shrugged, indicating he had no idea. They continued walking through the city until they reached an area blocked by large debris from bombs dropped by the military. Joel explained their plan. They would go around the debris and find a way to continue from the building nearby. Ellie quickly interjected with her own suggestion, but Joel clarified that he had actually found dynamite in a trailer and intended to blow up the debris. Ellie expressed her intrigue, but Joel decided they would instead go through the building to find a better vantage point. Ellie seemed distant, lost in her thoughts, and didn't pay much attention to Joel. Concerned, Naruto approached her and gently touched her shoulder, asking if she was okay. Ellie hesitated but assured him everything was fine. Naruto then asked if she had heard Joel's plan, and Ellie confirmed she had understood it. Joel crouched down, interlocking his hands to boost Ellie up to the second floor. As she climbed, something caught her attention, and she accidentally let go of the ladder. Joel called out to her, slightly annoyed, instructing her to stay put while he quickly placed the ladder back and climbed up. Naruto followed closely behind, hearing Ellie calling for them to hurry as she ascended the wooden stairs leading to the upper floors. They chased after her for 2 more floors before stopping a few meters away from her. A large hole in the wall allowed nature to filter in, and just a few steps away, a giraffe was munching on the leaves. Joel and Naruto approached Ellie cautiously, trying not to startle the animal. Joel moved closer to the wall to grab some branches with leaves. Ellie, curious, asked what he was doing. Joel invited her to come closer and handed her some leaves. Ellie extended the leaves to the giraffe, which eagerly accepted them. She repeated this a few times, and once, the giraffe stretched its long tongue to take the leaves directly from her hand, causing Ellie to laugh and Joel to smile. Naruto observed from a few steps back, reflecting on how their interactions had changed since they first met. Suddenly, the giraffe moved away, prompting Ellie to call out in surprise and chase after it, continuing up the stairs. Joel and Naruto exchanged glances before following her. When they reached the final step and opened a door, they found Ellie gazing at the horizon, where several giraffes were gathered in the distance. As they approached, they stood beside her, taking in the breathtaking view. Joel asked if it was what she had expected. Ellie replied that it had its good and bad aspects, but the view was undeniable. Joel glanced at Naruto, silently asking him to give them a moment alone. Understanding, Naruto stepped back and sat down a little distance away, contemplating the challenges ahead. Kurama, through their mental link, inquired about Naruto's worries. Naruto expressed his concerns about nearing the end of their journey and what would happen if they couldn't find the fireflies. Kurama reassured him that they would find them and could return to Jackson, urging him not to dwell on negative thoughts so close to their goal. Grateful, Naruto thanked Kurama before returning to reality, noticing Joel and Ellie approaching him. Once outside the building, they found a spacious area filled with several tents marked with a red cross, military vehicles, and abandoned medical supplies. As they walked through the tents, Ellie asked if this had belonged to Fedra. Joel explained that it was the military's, as they had set up emergency medical camps when the pandemic began, though they didn't last long. He recalled being taken to one of those camps. Ellie asked if Sarah had been with him, but Joel's somber response revealed that she was no longer there. Curious, Ellie pressed for more details, and Joel pointed to his forehead, indicating his wound. Ellie realized it was from the gunshot that had missed, thinking it had been more recent. Joel clarified that it had happened on the second day. As they paused, Ellie acknowledged that the military had done a better job stitching him up than she had. Joel confessed that he had been the one who shot and missed, capturing Ellie's attention. He sat on a piece of debris, and Ellie joined him, while Naruto stood in front of them. Joel shared his feelings of emptiness after Sarah's death, admitting he had been ready to end his life but faltered at the last moment. He pondered why he hesitated, revealing the weight of his past. In the end, Naruto decided to share his thoughts, but he was interrupted. Ellie chimed in, expressing her understanding of his intent. Joel responded with a hint of sarcasm, acknowledging her comment. Ellie remarked that time heals all wounds, to which Joel countered that it wasn't time that healed his. Naruto, who had been silent during their exchange, smiled at the two, feeling glad he had chosen to accompany them on this final leg of their journey. Ellie expressed her satisfaction at Joel's earlier failure, and he agreed. They both felt it was time to move on, and Joel began to walk, while Ellie lingered for a moment. Naruto approached her, placing a supportive hand on her shoulder, which made her smile. They continued their walk through the medical camp. After a few more steps, they began to hear laughter. However, Naruto suddenly sensed something was off. He heard an object being thrown behind them and turned just in time to see a grenade land on the ground. He quickly kicked it away, but the explosion still stunned all three of them. As Naruto reached for his pistol, he was knocked out by a blow to the back of his neck. Time passed, and Naruto awoke with pain in his neck. He found himself in a room modified to resemble a cell. He got up and looked around, spotting some members of the Fireflies nearby. Marlene's voice came from outside the makeshift cell, revealing her surprise at their arrival. She mentioned that she had trusted them to bring Ellie but hadn't expected them to succeed, especially since he had barely made it there alive. Confused, Naruto asked what had happened. Marlene explained that her men had intercepted them without knowing who they were. Concerned, Naruto inquired about Ellie and Joel. Marlene informed him that Joel was resting in a hospital room while Ellie was being taken for surgery. Naruto was taken aback, asking why she needed surgery. Marlene explained that the doctor had discovered the cordyceps fungus had grown in Ellie since birth, creating chemical signals that made the normal cordyceps believe she was infected. They intended to remove it, cultivate it, and create a vaccine. Naruto's heart sank as he asked if there would be any side effects. Marlene grimly replied that it would likely kill her. Stunned, Naruto leaned against the wall, searching for alternatives. He asked if there was no other way, to which Marlene sadly confirmed there wasn't. Desperate, he asked what if they found another immune person. Marlene shook her head, stating there were no others. In that moment, Naruto rolled up his sleeve to reveal a bite mark on his arm, questioning Marlene's certainty. Marlene was shocked to see the mark and realize he was still alive. Naruto urged her to take his blood and see if they could create a cure. Marlene stepped away briefly, returning with a vial and a knife. She instructed him to fill the vial with his blood for analysis. After some time, Naruto sat waiting for Marlene to return with the results. When the door opened, he stood up, seeing Marlene with a downcast expression. She informed him that they couldn't find anything in his blood and believed there was no way to create a vaccine based on his immunity. Frustrated, Naruto insisted that there had to be more immune people out there and urged her to find someone else. Marlene explained that she wouldn't resort to harming innocent people to find one. She informed him that Ellie was being prepared for surgery again and left the cell. Naruto sat back down, reflecting on their shared experiences, the good times, the laughter, the fights, the tears, and the love they had shown each other. Anger surged within him as he resolved not to lose Ellie as well. He infused chakra into his hands and broke the lock on his cell, surprising the guards. With swift movements, he knocked one out and disarmed the other, pointing the weapon at him and demanding to know where the operating room was. The soldier remained silent, provoking Naruto's fury, leading him to shoot the soldier in the foot. The soldier finally revealed that it was on the 4th floor. Without hesitation, Naruto shot him in the head, then turned to the unconscious guard and eliminated him as well. He took their weapons and continued on his path, taking out every firefly he encountered with a singular focus. Eventually, he reached a staircase leading to the 4th floor but paused when he heard a voice behind him. Joel stood there, his clothes stained with blood and an emotionless expression on his face. He confirmed that Marlene had shared the grim news with him as well. Together, they ascended the stairs to the 4th floor and arrived at the operating room. Naruto opened the door, stepping in first, followed by Joel. They found Ellie connected to monitors, just as she was being anesthetized. Naruto ordered them to disconnect her, drawing the attention of the doctor and 2 nurses. The doctor questioned how they had entered, but Naruto reiterated his demand. The doctor refused, brandishing a scalpel, but Naruto, without a hint of emotion, raised his shotgun and shot the doctor, ending the confrontation. The 2 nurses screamed in fear. Joel raised his voice, instructing them to disconnect the equipment and move quickly. The nurses complied, trembling, and covered the puncture made by the tube. He ordered them to turn around, and they obeyed without hesitation. Once they had turned, Joel lifted Ellie into his arms while Naruto kept his weapon trained on the nurses. After Joel had exited the room with Ellie, Naruto spoke, warning that killing his family was a bad idea. Without any emotion, he shot both nurses. He then sprinted after Joel, quickly catching up. They reached an elevator, entered, and pressed the button for their desired floor. When the doors opened, Joel rushed out, while Naruto stayed behind to hold the elevator, preventing anyone from following. As he was about to exit, he paused upon hearing a voice that wasn't Joel's. Marlene confronted Joel, asserting that he couldn't protect Ellie forever. She argued that no matter how many people he killed, Ellie would grow up, and he would either die or she would leave. Marlene questioned why they should live in a broken world when he could have saved it. Joel replied that it wasn't her decision to make. Marlene countered, suggesting that Ellie would want to do the right thing. Joel glanced at Ellie, then back at Marlene. Marlene insisted that it wasn't too late even after everything that had happened. She lowered her weapon, stating they would find a way. Just then, a gunshot rang out, and Marlene collapsed to the floor, wounded. Naruto approached her, kicking her weapon away before looking at Joel and instructing him to get Ellie in the car and wait for him. Naruto then turned his attention back to Marlene, crouching in front of her while still aiming his gun. She pleaded for mercy, but Naruto recounted her actions against him and his friends, emphasizing that she had harmed those he considered family. Marlene asked to be let go, but Naruto declared that she would come looking for Ellie one way or another. He stood up and, with a cold expression, shot Marlene in the head. He then walked back to where Joel was waiting by the car, and they drove away without looking back. Hours passed since they left the Fireflies hospital, and both Joel and Naruto remained silent, knowing their actions had extinguished the world's hopes for a cure. Yet, they felt no regret and did not look back. Naruto broke the silence, addressing Joel and asking him to take the blame if Ellie ever learned the truth. Joel was taken aback, but Naruto continued, explaining how he saw Ellie as a daughter and wanted Joel to keep that happiness. After a moment of contemplation, Joel promised he would. They resumed their journey in silence. Time passed, and Naruto was focused on the road when he heard soft sighs from the back seat. Looking in the rearview mirror, he saw Ellie waking up, confused and asking what had happened. Joel reassured her that she was safe and that the drags were still affecting her. Ellie recalled being with the Fireflies and questioned the drags. Naruto explained that they had conducted tests on her and others, revealing that several were immune, but the doctors had stopped searching for a cure. Ellie then asked about her clothes, and Naruto informed her that raiders had attacked the Fireflies and they barely escaped with her. Joel added that they would find her some clothes along the way. Ellie inquired if there were any casualties, and Naruto hesitated before confirming that there were. When she asked about Marlene, both Joel and Naruto fell silent. Naruto calmly stated that they were going home, implying the truth about Marlene's fate. Understanding the implication, Ellie turned away in the back seat, and both men exchanged sorrowful glances in the mirror. Joel expressed his sorrow, and Naruto silently echoed the sentiment. Days passed as they traveled along the road, stopping occasionally to rest and find clothes for Ellie and Naruto. The journey was quiet but peaceful, free from raiders or infected. Eventually, They examined the car's engine and determined it was beyond repair. Joel prepared to close the hood, but Naruto stopped him, insisting he would handle it. He carefully disconnected the battery and carried it over to his companions. Joel announced that they were 5 hours away from their destination on foot, but reassured them that it wouldn't be too difficult. Ellie agreed, and Naruto confidently added that it would be a piece of cake. They began walking through the woods toward Jackson, discussing trivial matters along the way. Joel shared stories about Sarah, while Naruto listened intently. After a couple of hours of walking, they spotted the village of Jackson in the distance. Joel, out of breath, pointed it out, and Naruto teased him about getting older. Joel reminded him of his age, eliciting a laugh from Naruto. They resumed their journey, but Ellie called out for them to wait. Both of them stopped and turned around. Ellie exclaimed in frustration and stepped forward, placing herself in front of them. In Kansas City, Joel had asked her whom she had killed first. She recalled her friend Riley and shared the memory with Naruto. Naruto was surprised to learn that Ellie had to take a life in Kansas City, but he brushed it off for the moment and continued to listen. When the infected had bitten her, she hadn't been alone. Her best friend had been with her, and she had been bitten too. They had been unsure of what to do, and her friend had suggested they could wait, be poetic, and lose their minds together. That was what they did. Ellie struggled to finish the thought, but both Joel and Naruto understood where she was headed. Riley had been the first to go, followed by Tess and then Sam. That isn't your fault, Naruto reassured her. I know, Ellie replied, but she was cut off. Sometimes things don't turn out the way we expect. It feels like your life comes to a halt, and you don't know how to move forward. But no matter what happens, you have to find something worth fighting for, Joel interjected, interrupting Ellie. I know this may not be what you want to hear, but... He couldn't finish his thought as Ellie interrupted him. Swear to me, she insisted, looking at both Joel and Naruto. Swear to me that everything you told me is true. They both looked at Ellie for a moment, their expressions serious. I swear, Joel said firmly. I swear, Naruto added without hesitation. Both of them stood resolute in their promise, even if it was a lie. Okay, Ellie responded, though deep down she sensed that something was off. After that conversation, they continued walking toward the town in silence. One day you will discover the truth, Ellie, Naruto thought to himself as he watched her walk ahead. I'll be there to tell you everything when that day comes. The end.